opportunity.
Yes, we do have a public input, no. All right, on to Nick O'Connell
Sure.
with the student report.
Hi, I'm Nick O'Connell, and I do not have a voice, and I will explain that later, actually.
In the meeting.
I'll explain that.
You picked a good meeting, not have a voice. Nobody here.
I'm lucky.
We're not even on.
I was crossing my fingers that it wouldn't be a packed house. So my job as the student representative, as many of the representatives have said before, is to act as the kind of mediator for the students, the student voice, to tell you guys what's going on in our school from a student perspective. So I'll cover the arts, academic highlights, and then athletic highlights. And just to start with our arts, our Masters team, our Masters club, last weekend was our Drama Fest, and they were actually one of 3 teams to move on of 9. To just summarize what Drama Fest is, a bunch of schools from the area, 9 schools from the area, from the region, come to a school, our school, which was awesome, to each perform small little skits, and then there's a competition to see who moves on to the semifinals. And luckily, our performance of Gory Stories, Mr. Bernard saw it, and I trust his word. He said it was fantastic, and I bet it was, because they always put on such awesome shows. And they're actually moving on to the semifinals, which is in Brockton on March 19th, which is going to be awesome. That's going to be to see how far they can actually go. And then a few days ago was actually our Taste of Metro North, which was a really cool event. I haven't seen it because I believe it's been at Reading for years past, but this year was actually in Main Street, which was really cool to see. And that's where a lot of food companies around the area come and give previews, little samples, thank you, of their foods, which was very cool to see, and it smelled really good. I was at practice, so I wasn't able to go, but it definitely smelled delicious. And then to go on to our academic highlights, course selection sheets were passed out a couple of weeks ago, and those were actually finished last week, handed into guidance. And I always have found that a cool process. I don't have to fill one out now because I'm a senior. But for our freshman, sophomore, and junior students, it's a good way to see all the courses that are actually available to you, because I think a lot of students have classes in mind, but they don't know what's available to them. So they have a booklet of courses that they can take, and they fill out the ones that they're interested in taking, along with teacher recommendations where they're recommending the level of class, say it's academic, say it's honors or AP, that they think that the students can take. And then they have a meeting with their guidance counselors where they show them what courses they're interested in taking, and there's a communication that goes on there. And I just find that such a cool process because everyone's involved. The students, the parents, the teachers, and guidance. So it's a great way to make a confusing, difficult process a lot easier. SATs were this Saturday. So a lot of our sophomore and junior students took those. And that's one of the, because when I took them in October, it was still the old format, and now this is the new. They've rearranged and changed a bunch of things. So this was one of the newer tests that they're using on these classes. And then for our student council, our Hyenas conference is later this week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And that's always an annual event that really shows our true leadership in our student council. And to move on to our athletics, excuse me. What a time to be a Hornet. I mean, it's title town. It's very exciting. Almost every team had made a run, and we have 3 teams that are still in the mix, and it's just so exciting. That would be explained by my voice. But to first cover our boys hockey team, they won the opening round 8-2 against Everett High School, which was a very big win, 8-2. That's always a strong team effort. But then they came up short, 5-4 in overtime against Lincoln Sudbury. But once again, great effort, and their heads are held high because they had a really good season. Then our girls basketball team won their first round playoff game at home. That was against Manchester Essex, and that was a great game too. Huge fan turnout for us, but also for Manchester Essex. So So there was a good back and forth, each side giving their chance, which was really cool.
And if you bet on the Hornets, you couldn't lose.
I know,
That game, right.
they're the Hornets. And so they're playing on Wednesday at Mystic Valley Charter School. I don't know why it's being played there, but
It's involved in, yeah.
yeah, they're the 1 seed. And they're playing Latin Academy, which should be a really, really good game. Now to our boys basketball. They won Saturday night in a huge comeback win, down as much as 17 in the third quarter, and they came back, which would explain why my voice is gone. I was yelling and screaming a lot. And so that team, we are playing tomorrow at 7 at Burlington High School. That was actually changed. It was originally supposed to be 8 at Woburn, but it was changed to tomorrow, 7 o'clock at Burlington High School. And then yesterday, our winter cheer team was the runner-up in the D4 regional competition, which was very, very big. They're going to the state competition. So really all of our teams are right in the mix, right? And all of our teams made deep, deep runs, which is very exciting. Just some league honors that I figured I would mention. Jess Lazan was the player of the year for the Cape Ann League and was also the first woman and first female in North Reading High School history to score 1,000 points in her career, which is huge, such an awesome achievement. And then Coach Joe Casey, the boys' high school basketball team, was Cape Ann League Coach of the Year. And coming from one of his players, that's a tremendous honor for him, and it's definitely well deserved. Additionally, our winter cheer team was the Cape Ann League champion. Our girls basketball team was the Cape Ann League champions, the first time in 23 years, so ending such a long drought. And then our boys basketball team was also Cape Ann League champions. So that's it for the student report. I'll give my...
Wasn't Coach Consopoulos the Division 5 Coach of the Year?
He was.
Was he?
Track as well?
Must have been,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think he was Boston Globe Division 5 Coach of the Year.
Really?
Yeah.
And they both
They
won.
both had great seasons.
Yeah, and they both won Cape Ann League
Yeah.
titles,
Yep.
which was
I
awesome.
have to update all the banners in the gym, which is really cool.
Yes.
Such a great year to
That's a
graduate.
good, that's a good one. Yeah.
And so now I will pass around my student report. This is from my Spanish 5 honors class. I hope you guys can read Spanish. But just to summarize what the assignment was about, we watched the movie Motorcycle Diaries. I don't know if anyone here has seen it. It's about Che Guevara and his trip around South America and how he eventually became who he came to be. And so we had a writing assignment following that video, the movie, and we also read a bunch of articles about biographies about him, and then we had to decide, based on his past, his present, and what he did as a leader of this big revolution, was he a hero or a monster? Both terms very extreme, so you could go down the middle, but I chose that I think he was a monster, but I know that sounds extreme. But I think I did pretty well with this. We had to write several paragraphs of well-written piece about our opinion, and then I have the Common Core rubric here that talks about purpose, and this is really long to read with a sore throat, so I'll just abbreviate. Just purpose, you're effectively writing to that specific purpose of what the rubric says. You're not going off on tangents, you're sticking to the purpose. Obviously, grammar is accurate, your style is efficient, it flows, and then content, vocabulary, we're using vocabulary that we learned in this unit and then throughout the year. So I'll pass that around. Once again, it's the rubric and then just the writing assignment, and you can see all the corrections. We did peer edits, self-edits, and then obviously Mrs. Diozzi, my Spanish teacher, corrected it as well, so I'll pass that around. And then that is it. Any questions?
So I was at the game, and you know, Nick gets a lot of time, but I wouldn't say he's a big scorer on the team, but we had gone up by 10, and Watertown, which was a very good team, was chipping away, and Nick got fouled with about, I don't know, it was probably a minute and a half left, maybe a little more. 2 huge foul shots, and I looked at Nick's mother, and I think she was saying a complete novena at the time. And she actually did tell me later she used up one of those special prayers that you're only supposed to use at really special
To win an athletic event, huh?
Yes, exactly.
A woman after my own heart.
And Nick sunk the first shot, and the second one was one of those true red Auerbach leprechaun shots. It hit the back of the rim, went up about 4 feet, and sunk, came right back through.
Once you hit the first one, Nick, the second one's...
So that was great, and that was a tremendous game. The gym was packed.
What's the scouting report on Bedford?
They're tall.
Really?
Yeah, they have a couple, their starting center is 6'6". And
Really?
they have a kid off the bench that's probably 6'5", 6'6".
Well, if he's off the bench, he can't do that.
And they shoot a lot.
Really?
They shoot a lot of threes.
And so that was great. I had to miss the girls' game. I was out of town. I did go to see Gory Stories. It was really entertaining, very strange, but a highly entertaining show. And at those contests, it's really hard for a lot of times it's hard for the first group that performs to move on because they see 7 or 8. The judges see 7 or 8 shows after that,
They're fresh in their
and
mind.
kind of the first show kind of loses its luster. And so for them to go first, for North Reading to get that first draw and to move on is it was really an imaginative show. The stage, everything, the costumes.
The theater seemed to
was
work
great.
pretty well
Yeah.
that day. I mean, there weren't any problems at all, right? It worked
No,
really
it was
well.
good.
No, I think we used the classroom building, right? We had the
Yeah,
students in
a
the
lot of
classroom
people
buildings.
here, and good crowd.
Had lunch and dinner,
Yeah.
and a party
Full
and a
day.
dance. And
Yeah.
I don't think they were done. I didn't get till like 10 o'clock that
That was
night.
late.
So it's a great week.
Congratulations to
11:30.
to all the athletic teams in the winter. I mean, they just picked up with us. Fall teams left off, and it's been a great year.
Yeah.
Good luck tomorrow night. 'Cause,
Thank you.
That's a big game.
They're gonna need it. Nick's not 6'5", but he can use his beef underneath the boards against those big guys. I'm not worried about that. Nick and Bobby are done.
Defend the
Keep those
perimeter.
guys off the boards, right?
Uh-huh. Yes, sir.
Oh, by the way, that girls basketball game, they were only up a point at the half.
Right.
And Jess Lazon had 21 points in the second half, so
Yeah.
she really came alive there. They did a good job.
Just a question about your work.
Sure.
Do you watch videos in all Spanish and read in Spanish, like those articles
Yeah,
that you used?
yeah. Which is very, very, very challenging.
See.
Espanol Cinco.
Right.
Okay. You're more than welcome to stay.
It looks like there's a huge crowd. So.
You can,
Nick, I'll get that.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, is that right?
Thank you very much.
thank you,
Thank
as
you.
your voice recovers.
I know, I hope.
Good luck
I know.
tomorrow.
Okay.
See ya. Thank you.
Usually the spectator loses there.
I know.
It is the point of the player.
Big game.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Superintendent, would you like to do the
Thank you.
MSBA?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So first report to you, some good news in the way of the contractors being back on site to begin their work earlier than had been anticipated. They actually started early last week. They brought some equipment in on Monday the 29th and started some work in earnest on Tuesday the 1st down at the field area of the former high school. So some good news. The weather has cooperated and enabled work to begin for the spring sooner than we had anticipated. Some of that work included some removal of water at that site in order to begin for the work that needs to continue on the fields, the sidewalk installation, parking lots and such. The fence work, you may have noticed that much of the pole installation, there's kind of a cross rail for that extensive amount of fencing at the site has begun. And as far as inside, there is some punch list work that continues. I think it's fair to say that work is, to a degree coming to a close. We have a building committee tomorrow night. There are a few things that are still outstanding. I have the advantage, as you all know, of Kevin Nigro, our project manager, and Matt Skillen, who will be working out of the high school middle high school now, and so I have pretty good access to them, and so as things come up, I'm able to get there here. So work progresses. There's a lot to be done still down at the site of the former high school, but I think, again, with the cooperation of the weather, we've got a little bit of a jump on that, so hopefully sooner to be completed.
I was down there today talking to the guys, and they're actually spreading the material. And there's a bulldozer down there leveling it off, so they're elevating that. And they were telling me that as soon as that's done, they're going to put a foot, just like the softball field, a foot of sand, and then a foot of loom, on top of that. And they had actually, the rock breaker upper came in today. And they were.
Is that the technical
You
term?
know,
Yeah.
The rock breaker?
Yeah. And they finally came in, and I think they were down there breaking up rocks.
No, I'm glad you said that, Jerry,
Yeah.
because I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, but yeah, Kevin said they're gonna start tomorrow.
Yeah.
He expects that to be one day, but he said he wanted me to be aware because he said it can be.
There is one piece of ledge sitting out there, kind of in left center field, I think it is,
Okay.
that they're looking at smashing up, so.
So that will be tomorrow, is that the indication, Dr.?
Yeah.
So they'll hear it all the way in the academics?
I asked him if we would hear it at the school. He didn't think so, but he thought for the neighbors. He said it could be an error thing. He wanted me to be aware in case anyone called. Just, yeah.
Go out and do some
Heads
errands.
It should be just the one day.
I work. I can hear it at my house.
Can you really?
It's that kind of constant
Yeah. I
tap,
can
tap,
just hear it.
so
Yeah.
it might be a bit irritating.
There's a guy around the corner from me who's working on a house, and he's got the same operation going on in the backyard there. It's been going on for 3 days, so
Mm.
it happens everywhere.
They tell you to come over here tomorrow, but it won't be quiet.
All right, Mr. Conley, you can proceed.
So there is a PowerPoint presentation, so if you want to leave a seat. And the copy of the PowerPoint was provided in your handout. So some of the topics I will cover during tonight's presentation is I am going to talk a little bit about the challenges, some of the budget challenges that we're seeing this year that are consistent with prior years as well. Talk about the budget priorities and the budget goals. We'll review some of the key priorities. We'll review some of the funding sources that make up the municipal and school department budget. We'll talk about the major budget drivers at play. Then we'll get into the detail of the numbers and the new requests and some new positions driven by our strategic plan. We'll also talk about some other revenue sources that are used in the school department budget to offset our general fund request, operating budget request. And then we'll finish with some conclusions and talk about next steps in the budget process. So budget challenges. First and foremost, flat state aid. This has been a consistent trend over the last several fiscal years here in North Reading. The FY17 governor's budget proposal has come out, and we are not due to see significant increases in local aid or Chapter 70, the two major sources that the North Reading receives in the form of state aid. Chapter 70 is only due to receive the minimum $20 per pupil increase, accounting for $49,320. So it's certainly a challenge with state aid being flat. The proposals that were presented as part of that Chapter 70 review commission in terms of increasing funding for health insurance costs and special education in and out of district costs were not funded in the governor's proposal. So it's certainly clear to state that certainly the foundation budget, which governs Chapter 70, is not really keeping it up to date with current trends of spending. Constrained local revenue. So clearly, as we all know, the way funding works in municipal finance is that we're kind of constrained to that 2.5%, proposition 2.5% of local property taxes, and that is the majority of the town's revenue to fund both the school and town budget. So clearly, the revenue, which is predominantly from property taxes, is not keeping pace with increased fixed costs, and in particular this year, where health insurance is certainly a challenge, and the anticipated increase of our fixed costs. A quick slide shows you that over the last few fiscal years, projected fiscal 2017 is included. This is certainly an issue with our school department and town budget when you have fixed costs almost every year doubling the amount of fixed costs. These are fixed cost increases doubling the amount of our ability to increase revenue. So that certainly presents a structural challenge with municipal budgets. Going back to our challenges, flat school revenue offsets. So we rely heavily on funding from federal and state grants. These are predominantly entitlement grants that we receive on an annual basis that we pursue and help to offset our general fund budget requests. I'll get into those in a little bit more detail later in the presentation, as well as revolving accounts. So we do assess tuition fees and user fees for athletic programs, extracurricular events, busing, the full-day kindergarten and the preschool program, that all work to kind of offset our total operating budget requests. And those are relatively flat. I mean, this chart, this graph does show you over the last several years, over the last few years, from fiscal 15 through fiscal 17, we've kind of reached a capacity. We're sort of leveling out the ability for these revenue offsets to help the school budget. Fiscal 2011 and 2012, that was known as the ARA grants, the ARA, certainly ARA, where we received additional grant opportunities and funding to help us get through that economic recession. They talked about that funding cliff analogy when the ARA grants ran out. That happened in fiscal 12, and we did see a decline in fiscal 13. Fiscal 14 was kind of a unique year where we had only a 1.8% operating budget increase that year, but we maintained the same level of services by using a lot of one-time revenue sources. So we had built up some additional revenue in some of these revolving accounts over time, which does happen, and those were essentially the majority of those one-time sources, and surplus revenue that had built up was used in 14 to get through that fiscal 2014 budget. And then we saw a little bit of a drop-off over these last few years, and now we are kind of leveling out at just over $2.3 million as a revenue offset. There is a proposal in the fiscal 2017 budget that I'm going to talk about later that involves an increase to the bus user fee. That's something we don't want to do, but there's a reason for it. We had to go out to bid this year for our bus transportation, which we're required to do once every 3 years, and unfortunately the market rates for bus transportation, because of several factors, has increased, and as a result we're looking to gain some assistance to that by increasing the user fee. I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail later in the presentation. The last challenge is contractual obligations. So these are our fixed salary obligations for our existing staff members. These are the cost of living adjustments, in some cases the contractual step increases, in some cases there's longevity increases. So these are certainly items that we certainly are contractually obligated to increase, and that salary increase, it accounts for 2.7% of our total budget increase, which is recommended at 6.2 in our recommended budget. Almost half of that is our fixed contractual salary obligations. So that is certainly a challenge, and that's pretty consistent trend from prior years in terms of the school operating budget. Funding sources of the school budget. So as I just mentioned earlier, local property taxes make out the majority of what a municipal like North Reading brings in terms of revenue sources. So the local taxes over 71%. State aid, predominantly Chapter 70, and unrestricted government local aid makes up the largest other piece at 13.7. There's local receipts the town receives in, which is around 9.5%, and then these are our school department additional revenue sources from our federal and state grants and the user fees and tuition payments we do collect annually at 5.5%. This is very similar, almost identical to the last 3 or 4 years in terms of a percentage breakdown of our total revenue sources for the school budget. Budget priorities. So each year we set our budget goals. The school committee voted those budget goals in September. There was a lot more than the ones I've highlighted here, but I think these are some of the major priorities and goals that have driven our recommended budget request that's before you this evening for consideration. Certainly, maintaining sound, educationally sound class sizes at every level, certainly elementary on through the middle school and the high school has always been a priority the school department as well as the school committee, and that continues to be the case in our budget, recommended budget. Implementing year one of what we are now calling NRPS 2021, which is the school district's 5-year strategic plan. You saw a snapshot of Superintendent Bernard's strategic plan at the last meeting. And this has been a document that we have used for the last several years. It was known as NRPS 2016 originally. We've continued that and updated it 5 years out. And it's really been a great working tool that really has guided a lot of our new requests, enhancement requests to move the district forward. And that is the case with the recommended budget this evening. There's 6-point FTE new positions that I'll talk about later on in the presentation, guided by our strategic plan known as NRPS 2021. So it's definitely a huge driver of the budget. Certainly maintaining this beautiful state-of-the-art campus, middle school and high school campus, is a priority. There are some new requests and expenses related to maintaining this beautiful campus in the budget requests. So that is certainly a priority for the budget. Restoring expense budgets. These are the discretional expense budgets, mainly that the schools and principals oversee. This is the instructional materials, the classroom supplies, the textbooks that provide direct instructional really supplies and materials into the classroom. Those have been level funded for over I believe it's 8 years now. And they even went through a reduction by about 5 to 7% during the development of the fiscal 2015 budget. So there was about $57,000 increase in this budget that would restore those expense budgets to prior year levels, and we certainly, that was a key priority during the development of the budget goals, and it's certainly a priority in the budget that's before you this evening. And then, as always, we want to continue to collaborate with the finance planning team. That is the team that's made up of the chairs and vice chairs of the 3 major boards in town: Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, School Committee, as well as myself, Superintendent Bernard, the Town Administrator, and Town Finance Director. So it's worked very, very well here in North Reading, and we want to continue to collaborate with that as we develop our budget. Budget drivers. So these are there's 5 key drivers in this year's budget. I just talked a little bit about contractual salary obligations. We'll see in a moment, I'm going to show you a pie chart that shows you that salaries represent 83.5% of our total budget requests. So salary obligations are always a driver of the school budget. As stated earlier, this represents 2.7% of the total 6.2% increase that's before even the recommended budget. NRPS 2021, certainly a big driver of this year's budget. That's the strategic plan I just mentioned. There are 6 positions totaling $406,555, which represents a 1.5% increase, again, out of that total 6.2% total increase. The plan focuses on teaching and learning initiatives, student support service initiatives, and technology integration initiatives. And again, I'll talk about those 6 positions a little bit later on. Operational fixed costs. This was certainly a driver this year. I would say maybe a little bit more so than in prior years. We're certainly dealing with some challenges, particularly around the bus contract. I mentioned it earlier that we have had to go out to bid, and we essentially are looking at about a 15% increase in our daily rate per bus a day, which is leading to about an $83,000 increase for our bus transportation contract in next fiscal year's budget. So that's certainly a big driver. We also talk about other fixed costs, utilities. We certainly are seeing some increase in utilities. Our water rates are expected to go up between 8 and 9%. Electricity is expected to go up between 3 and 5.5%. We've also had a need to increase our telecommunications, our phone budget. The E-rate program, which is the governmental program that provides funding to schools and libraries. This is another funding source, federal program that we've always relied on as an offset to our telecommunications budget. They are having a little bit of a shift with how the government, how this federal program is going to operate. And next year, there's no available funds for telecommunications. That's our local and long distance costs with Verizon, which we have with Verizon to run the school department. So we've had to kind of shift more expenses into our operating budget to cover a loss of some funding in the E-rate program. So that being said, there's certainly an impact to some of these operational fixed costs. Special education costs is certainly a driver of our school department budget. About 27% of the FY17 recommended budget is made up of costs directly related to special education costs from salaries and expenses. So we have additional funds in our FY17 recommended budget to account for an anticipated increase in our out-of-district tuitions and transportation costs. Those are expected to rise and increase in fiscal 2017. The existing fiscal 2016 budget, and we currently have a budget that accounts for about 30 students in out-of-district placements. The FY17 budget proposal includes an anticipation that we will have 33 students in outside placements. So we've had to certainly plan for that to meet the needs of these students. The district continues to evaluate special education programs and where appropriate, has certainly reallocated current resources to provide additional student support services. We're certainly, in particular, we're looking at providing additional social and emotional support. You'll see a slide a little bit later where I'm going to talk about a need for 3 new positions, special education positions, to address a continuation of in-district special education programs. So that is a need and is certainly a driver of fiscal 2017 budget. And then lastly, the restoration of instructional expense budgets. That's the instructional materials and supplies that we really feel it's very important that we increase those line items next year. And we've not been able to fund small capital and equipment requests. This was a line item of about $20,000 that was eliminated during the fiscal 2015 budget process. We have not been able to restore that line item, and that line item does help deal with the small capital maintenance requests, maintenance repair items, maybe some furniture replacement requests that the large capital process that's handled by the town and the school combined through the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. They're looking at large capital requests in excess of $25,000. This is small capital, things maybe greater than $5,000, but less than 20 that there is a need for. And these are mainly the small maintenance repair equipment needs at the schools, mainly the elementary schools. And we would like to restore that line with $20,000. So these are the major drivers. And looking at this chart in terms of the preliminary budget, you can kind of see some of these drivers certainly at play by looking at the numbers.
Mike, before you go, I just noticed this tonight, the salaries line doesn't calculate. The change does not reflect the change that's shown. The change should be like $1,251,000.
Oh.
So I don't know what number's wrong, if the budget number's wrong or the change number is wrong.
Okay, I'll peek at that.
Okay.
I can pull it up before the end and I
Okay.
can clarify that. Might have been something got transferred over into the PowerPoint. You can definitely see the drivers at play. The salary is going up by about 5.7%. Again, those are those contractual obligations and some of the new positions that I'm going to talk about momentarily. The instructional expenses going up by $79,580 from fiscal 16 to 17. That's the attempt to certainly restore instructional line items and address for some technology needs as part of this new building that I spoke of earlier. Operations and maintenance increasing by $96,000. Utilities is in that line item. And I talked about that fixed cost need to address some increases in utilities as well as the telecommunications budget. There's also a need, and I get into it a little bit later, where I talk about some building and grounds restructuring and enhancements as part of the recommended budget. of $96,000 going up by 6%. We feel there's a need to adequately maintain, and particularly all the schools, as well as the needs of this campus, to put in some new service contracts that we have not had before. So that's certainly a driver that I just spoke of, and a priority that's reflected here. Transportation, as I mentioned, you're seeing an increase here. That's certainly driven by anticipation of an increase in out-of-district transportation. Both special education transportation as well as regular transportation is part of this line item. And we are anticipating that regular busing transportation, because of the bid that we went out in the new contract, certainly there needs to be an increase there. So you're seeing certainly some the largest percentage increases are in the areas of transportation tuition, driven by the out-of-district costs to meet the needs of the students that just spoke of a little bit earlier, as well as the transportation, both with the regular transportation contract rates expecting to go up. In terms of the pie chart, just a quick snapshot, some of the items I just talked about. This is a very common trend in school department budgets. You're going to see salaries make up over 80% of a school department budget. Certainly personnel is certainly what drives a lot of what happens. This was very consistent makeup a year ago. I don't think these percentages changed more than a 0.1%. So salaries is the largest piece of the pie. Out-of-district tuition costs at 5.7, with operations and maintenance around 5.9 to adequately maintain our buildings, make up the next largest piece on the expense side of things. And then the instructional expenses, the materials, the supplies, and the textbooks is at 3.9%. So very consistent makeup from prior years as well. We talk about our pure pupil spending versus the state, and this is something that I think we've always prided ourselves on, and I think continues to be the case. These FY15 pure pupil amounts for spending, which takes into account all spending, not just spending in general fund dollars and operating fund dollars, but this is spending for related to school department spending in every area, including revolving accounts, state and federal grants. We've always had a pretty low pure pupil spending. We've always been lower than the state average. And the FY15 amounts were actually published this last week, and that continues to be the case. So North Reading is, again, well below the average. We're at $14,137 in fiscal 15, up a little bit from 14, but again, below the state average at $14,920. So we're over 5% lower than the state average in pure pupil spending. So I think it's fair to say we continue to provide certainly a high quality education at lower spending levels in North Reading compared to the state. Enrollment projections, another big part of the budget. Certainly always, definitely can consider the budget driver as well. Wasn't so much the case this year because we're not making or anticipating major changes in enrollment. So therefore, they're not major staff increases or decreases to address changes in enrollment amongst the levels. So currently we're at 2,532 is our October 1 enrollment count. You saw a detailed presentation was given in October of our October 1 enrollment counts by level. So we are anticipating a decline by about 20 students next year to 2,512. And the decline is anticipated to continue over the next 5 years. Essentially, when you look at in terms of the elementary, middle school, and high school level, elementary enrollment is stabilizing over the next 5 years, where next year that enrollment is anticipated to go down by 5 students. The middle school is where we're anticipating the largest decline over the next 3 years. Next year, that decline is anticipated to be by about 20 students. In the high school is anticipated to, again, remain above 800. So we were above 800 this year for the first time in several years. You can see we're at 801 currently, anticipating to go up by about 6 students next year at 807. So that's, all in all, the change from one year to next year, around 20 students, is not significant. So there are really no major changes to staffing to address, changes in enrollment. The high school, as you may recall, it's gone up significantly from fiscal 14. In last year's budget, one of the major priorities was addressing that increase to protect class sizes and so forth, and course offerings at the high school, and we were able to achieve some of that through last year's budget. So we will still remain above 800 for the next 2 years before we'll experience an anticipated decline around fiscal year 2019, going down to about approximately 756 students, is what the projections are indicating. The largest decline over the next 3 to 5 years is anticipated to be at the middle school, as you have the larger class sizes at the middle school transition their way to the high school. Certainly, the birth rates are stabilizing, and so we're not participating in major changes at the elementary level over the next 3 to 5 years. This was a chart that we looked at a year ago, and I thought it was important just to look at it briefly tonight, as it was a major driver of last year's budget, and I think we accomplished certainly a lot last year in terms of the additional staffing we achieved at the high school, but we are still, I think it's still fair to say, we are still seeing some challenges in some class sizes at the high school. This chart depicts essentially 135 classes in all academic subjects are having class sizes of greater than 24 students. So this is the number of classes here in the vertical axis. Horizontal is the number of students in each class. So we certainly are still seeing some high class sizes that we would like to address. A lot of these classes are the advanced placement courses and so forth. These are better ratios than a year ago, where things were certainly higher, so we definitely are heading in the right direction. As part of NRPS 2021 staffing that you'll see later in the presentation, there is an additional academic teacher at the high school, and a lot of that is to continue to offer educationally sound class sizes and the course offerings that the high school has always been able to certainly achieve.
Mike, I have one question. You said there were 135 classes greater than 25 students?
Yes, I believe that's the ratio.
Greater than 24, right?
Greater than 24 or greater. So from this on.
Excuse me, is that for last year or this year?
I believe that's this year's ratio. Yeah.
This chart represents.
Last year was higher, so I remember last year saying we had about 55% of our classes at the high school had class sizes of 24 or greater. We're down to like the low 40s right now, 41, 42%. So I mentioned it earlier. I'm now going to take you through a few slides that reference some additional staffing that's being recommended in our fiscal 2017 budget. First and foremost is staffing related to special education program transition, driven staffing changes. We feel that this is certainly, 3 positions that are key and important to maintain level services, and the continuation of these 2 key programs from students that are moving from the elementary level onto the middle school, as well as the middle school onto the high school. So there are students that are in the elementary, and they're in the 5th grade that are part of the Pathways program. They will be transitioning to the middle school, and we have looked at it, and we think this certainly requires an additional special education teacher to meet the needs of these students transitioning on. The Pathways program is a substantially separate classroom which offers a small group setting, modified curriculum, as well as individualized instruction and pacing. So it's certainly important that we continue this program onto the middle school. The same can be said for the Connections program for students transitioning from the middle school, 8th grade, onto the high school. There is a need for an additional special education teacher and inclusion paraprofessional to maintain the needs of these students in this program. So all in all, I think there's about 10 total students between students at the middle school and the high school that need support in these programs. It can be noted that it's always best to provide services whenever appropriate in district, and if we do not offer these 3 positions, there is a potential that these students would need to be placed to meet their needs, the needs in out-of-district programs. So it's certainly important. These 3 positions at the cost of $148,934, we consider it as part of a level services budget request to continue the continuation of these key programs.
Mike, I have a question on that. So you say
there's a potential for them to be placed out of district. And I know our pupil personnel and services director is, directly involved in this, but what is that potential? Are we just taking a guess?
No, I think it would need to happen, essentially. We've done an assessment with the administrative team and the special education department, and with the existing staff at the middle school and high school, as well as the needs of the current programs at the elementary level and the middle school level, we don't see any way how these students can be can be absorbed into what the programs that are existing currently. So
it's less a potential than it's the fact.
It
that
is
they
a
wouldn't be able
fact.
to meet their
Yeah.
needs, so they'd have to be
it is.
transferred
And
out.
what the variable is also what the placement would be, and a parent's agreement to that placement too.
Right.
Correct.
And
So-
these three positions are in addition to the 6.0 increase.
Correct.
So it's really 9. that we're
Correct, yeah, I'll
increasing.
go through a slide that shows you the FTE increase from this year to next year, which is actually going to end up at 10.2 based on our recommended budget. So this really is, it is fair that this would need to happen based on our assessment. Any more questions before I move on? So NRPS 2021, as I noted earlier, 6 positions, 6 FTE positions, meeting the areas of the 3 key strategic objectives: teaching and learning, student support services, and technology integration. This represents, again, about 1.5% overall increase in our total fiscal 2017 budget request. The academic teacher, I noted earlier, will help maintain educationally sound classes at the high school level and allow for a continuation of broad academic courses and programs that include courses of high student interest. So we feel that is a key part of this objective. The next 2 positions are administrative positions. The first is a position that is called the Elementary Teaching and Learning Coordinator. This would be an administrative position that would work with the existing curriculum leaders and the administrators in providing support in the following areas: curriculum, instruction, assessment, administrative duties, and supervision and evaluation. So we've certainly seen a need for this elementary level position to provide support in those areas. The secondary teaching and learning coordinator, or STEM secondary coordinator, would have a focus on, again, this is a grade 6 through 12 secondary level administrative position that would oversee the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics curriculum at the secondary level. The coordinator would work closely with the high school and middle school curriculum teachers and leaders in the areas of science and mathematics, as well as the digital learning coordinator and Dr. Patrick Daly to align curriculum, and they would also be involved in supervision and evaluation as well. In the school psychologist position at the middle school, we feel is necessary to meet objectives laid out in student support services of NRPS 2021. We feel this would certainly allow us to better meet the needs of increasing social and emotional needs of our students. The special education teacher at the high school would allow for reduced class sizes in the co-taught classes at the high school level. Reduced class sizes will allow for more personalized instruction and thus enhanced learning in these classes. The final request is in the area of technology integration, and this is the digital learning paraprofessional. You may recall we made significant advancements in the digital learning model with the schools during the fiscal 2016 budget development process. This digital learning paraprofessional would work with the existing 3 digital learning paraprofessionals, 1 at each elementary level, to provide the technology assistance in the classroom at all schools throughout the district.
Can you just tell us where that position, where the planned placement of that position would be?
Yeah, they would focus a good part of their time at the bachelor school, being the largest school, the highest number of students. We feel they would certainly be a focus at the bachelor school, but they would focus at all 3 elementary schools as well.
In addition to the digital learning teacher?
Correct.
And
That's right.
the current library/technology
Para,
para.
digital learning. Para.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so they would help, they would be a part of that digital learning team to work with the existing digital learning specialists, the teachers at those 3 schools, as well as the digital learning and media para, working in the labs and the libraries. Yes, please.
I wanted to make a point about the STEM coordinator, the secondary level coordinator. The question might be, what about the humanities? That would be in year 2. We would be looking to add a similar position in FY 2018, but for the secondary level humanities.
Can you just describe where that need came up for the additional digital learning para, or district-wide?
It was largely driven by the population at the Batchelder School, and I think that Michael mentioned that the bulk of their work would be at the Batchelder School, but we're also absent you might remember that when we had enacted the digital learning plan last year, we fell short with one digital learning specialist that was going to service the middle high school campus combined, and so we're looking to kind of provide some additional support through the para position. So it would be like maybe a 2/3, 1/3 split, or something like that, right?
So we are also looking, so we have certainly completed our work on the NRPS 2021 document. And we are looking at ways to achieve the objectives laid out in that plan strategically over the next 3 to 5 years. And we've already started conversations where how we would phase in a lot of the requests to move that plan and put that plan into action. And these are the priority positions we have identified as an administrative team for next year. The final 1.2 FTE increases reflected in the 2017 recommended budget are clerical support positions, one of which is a 0.2 FTE academic services secretary to certainly assist Dr. Daly. That position is only a 0.8 position. They don't work a full school year, so they don't work during the summer or a full schedule in the summer. And for all the work that certainly Dr. Daly and his team, and the digital learning team, and the curriculum and instruction work that is involved within that department, we certainly feel it's a priority to increase some secretarial support, certainly in that department. So that is part of this request.
I would just add too that the person that's in that role is appointed also not only doesn't work the full summer, also doesn't work a full day during the school year.
Correct.
Works an abbreviated day.
So 1.0 would include summer?
1.0 would expand the work week, say
Right.
during the school year, and an additional time in the summer.
Yes. So that's
Around
what,
there are those kind of peak periods
Mhm.
in the summer.
correct. So for 14,256, they would be full-time all throughout the school year and summer. The final request, 1.0 FTE receptionist clerk in central office. You may recall a year ago, this position was discussed and it was part of the preliminary proposal. Certainly the new central office design, certainly for the first time this school year, we have all of the major central office departments together in one central office suite. We feel there is a need for a central office receptionist position to ensure duties such as the phones, deliveries, visitors, mail, all coming into our office, which is a very, very busy office, is handled appropriately. Currently, we have trying to piece together the existing staff, and there's actually an accountant in my office that's trying to cover those duties for only a portion of the day. Someone's not covered throughout the day, and we're certainly seeing a need for this position, and the solution we have is not the optimum solution to meet this need. We feel there is a potential to have some additional offsets down the road from potentially from the facility rental account if duties are included to help the scheduling and the billing of our facility rental needs. So as a summary, I know I just went through a lot in 3 slides, covered a lot. You'll note in your budget book FTE going up by 10.2 FTE positions, and this is in summary what those positions are. The special education transition positions, which we think is very necessary, is our top priority. We consider that a level services request. So this 3.0 FTE for 148,934 is really part of a level services budget request. The budget before you this evening is a modified level services with some additional enhancements driven by our strategic plan, mainly the NRPS 2021. But certainly a priority as well are those 6 positions noted earlier, and then the 1.2 of clerical support for 44,256. So all in all, this represents $600,045 increase, and it would be an increase of 10.2 FTE positions. Building and grounds enhancements. So we have been looking a lot at the building and grounds department this year and working a lot with Wayne Hardacre, the supervisor of building and grounds, to deliver the appropriate level of services and to meet the needs of this campus. The reality is, I think this campus has certainly changed the needs of that department significantly. It's certainly a big campus, and there's a lot of high technical equipment, and the energy management system that runs this building, as well as our other buildings, are certainly high tech. And we certainly feel that there is a need to institute some new service contracts that we don't have currently in the areas of HVAC support, rooftop equipment support. These would be, there's a lot of HVAC rooftop units in this building, as well as the other buildings. There is a lot of HVAC duct work and filters need to be changed on a regular schedule, certainly in this campus. We feel there's a need to institute some service contracts to adequately upkeep and maintain. The focus would be on this campus. Energy management service contracts. So we have certainly, everything is high technical. We can put everything on schedules in this campus in terms of electricity and heating and lighting. And we feel having a monthly contract with a professional in the energy management service realm to adequately make sure this campus is being serviced appropriately, things are being balanced, we have the right set points at all times to maintain an appropriate level of heating and cooling to help supplement the work that we're doing, that Wayne and his staff is doing, is needed. The third need in terms of additional service contract is a landscaping service contract. Again, this campus has added a lot of additional grounds that we want to upkeep and maintain. And we feel a modest service contract of, I believe this was accounted for about $11,000 increase of between 4 and 5 visits a year of a landscaping company to help supplement the work that our 2 maintenance and ground staff members are doing, who are doing an excellent job, is necessary to adequately maintain and upkeep this campus, which is certainly robust and has a need. So those are the 3 service contracts. There's also a little bit of a shift in personnel in terms of our structuring to meet the needs of our buildings and grounds in our 5 schools. We feel we've done a lot of work and a lot of analysis throughout this school year on square footage analysis and how to reach optimal levels of cleaning that's required at all our buildings. And we've looked at it closely. We've actually made some internal reassignments of our existing staff, cost-neutral reassignments to achieve optimal results of our cleaning and our custodial staff. You may recall a year ago, we did reduce a custodian that was added as we balanced the fiscal 2016 budget. We have worked very hard to make the existing staff work to achieve optimal levels of cleaning. We're trying to reach about 32,000 square feet. That is the industry standard per custodian. And right now, in this building in particular, we're a little bit short of that. We're about 35,000 square feet. We were at 38,000 square feet at the beginning of the year. I think we put our heads together and made some internal decisions to reassign some staff to bring that level down. But we think optimally we're about 1 second shift custodian shy of what we really need to meet the needs, the adequate standard of cleaning, particularly on this campus. All of these 4 things I just talked about certainly come with a cost to it, and we are looking to How can we meet the needs of these service contracts, meet the cleaning needs of this building, and do that in a cost-effective manner. And we are proposing an elimination of the existing HVAC technician position to make a lot of this work. And certainly easy, decisions, but we feel this would be a restructuring and a change that would better optimally meet the needs of all 5 schools, and particularly the needs of this middle school, high school campus. We want to actively protect the investment that certainly the school in this town has made for this beautiful state-of-the-art facility, and we feel, moving forward with this plan would allow us to do that.
I have a question. What is the projected cost of these enhancements?
It's $32,000. All right, I think it's just over $32,000. So roughly, if you want me to itemize this list, these 2 HVAC rooftop service agreements are about $30,000, about $15,000 a piece, maybe a little bit over that. The energy management is another $15,000. So between these 2 needs, we're at $45,000. The landscaping service contract is a little over $11,000. A second shift custodian will cost about $43,000, and we would be eliminating about $70,000. So all in all, it nets to about a $32,000 cost impact. And we feel we would get a lot, for that cost. Any additional questions on this? So I mentioned earlier about the bus user fee increase proposal, and we certainly don't take any of proposals to increase a user fee lightly. I thought it's important before we talk about this user fee increase to talk a little bit about a background on our busing program and what we do currently and what the law says and what we are required to do. So currently we are required by statute, by law, to bus students in grades kindergarten through 6th that reside greater than 2 miles away. And that's what we do currently. We also offer a bus pass at a user fee for those students that don't qualify based on distance in grades kindergarten through 6th, that may be either within the 2-mile limit in grades K through 6 or outside the 2-mile limit in grades 6 through 12. They purchase a bus pass, and we provide the busing, transportation for students that participate in that optional program. Currently, we run about 10 total buses. 5 buses would be required to meet the needs of the students that we're required to transport, and then 5 buses we are part of that optional busing program for the total of 10. So ideally, the ratio and the breakdown that we're trying to achieve is to keep the optional busing program, the additional 5 that we're not required to offer that what we do, as cost neutral and as self-supportive as we can by assessing the user fee to those students. Because we're dealing with a contractual increase because of the shift in the market, 3 years ago when we went out to bid, the cost was around $280, it was in the 280s per bus per day. Because of Affordable Health Care Act, because of the Sick Law Act in Massachusetts, as well as just a shortage of bus drivers in general, and prevailing wage rates, et cetera, that market has shifted, and every district is seeing it, and we're now in the 320s as kind of the going market rate per bus. So that's about an $83,000 impact to continue to offer those 10 buses. And this user fee increase, current fee $300 as an individual bus pass, $500 family cap. The proposed fee from $400 as an individual to $650, from $500 to $650 for a family cap. Based on our projections of our existing population, we feel would net an additional $45,000 as in revenue, which is included in part of this proposal, which would help offset the increase in the spike in the rates based on the new contract. In terms of, really quick, in terms of the school department budget, what makes up the school budget? The request in front of you this evening is $29,195,372. It's a $1.7 million increase, 6.2% over fiscal 16. I spoke of the grants and revolving accounts. That's at 5.5% of total revenue for the school and the town budget. So a little over 2.4 million is accounted for between our federal and state grants and these revolving account offsets I just spoke of. That's the bus offset, that's the athletic user fee offset, extracurricular offset, full-day kindergarten, preschool. The increase is really driven by the increase in the bus user fee. So total funds to operate the school budget were really at $31,613,372. What's not included in any of these numbers, which I think kind of goes unnoticed, which we're trying to do a better job of recognizing, is the annual school committee accepted donations. And I think projected this year, we're in that around 90,000. And then the works that the parent associations and various support groups do to help supplement the enrichment activities that we do, that the schools realize, and their in-kind gifts that we're starting to recognize publicly, as well as their budgets are in the range of $60,000. One more time, just a breakdown of our salaries and expenses. I did look up in the budget book, and I did see where that mistake was earlier in the chart. No, it was a typo on the salary amount that was reflected in that chart. I can go back to it if you want to see it and give you the right number. It is on page 59 of the budget book. The right number is reflected. So again, we're at 29,195,372. Really quick, we want to take a little bit of a snapshot at our operating budget history and look at what's kind of been happening in terms of operating budget increases over the last 8 or 9 years. And you can kind of look at the chart and see where we've been. Certainly you had the arrow years that I spoke of, fiscal 10, fiscal 11, where we got by with larger one-time revenue offsets. You had that year in 2014 where we used a lot of one-time revenue sources to balance the budget. That's why we had a modest increase of 1.9%. We dealt with an increase of 4.4 in 13. Last year we did a lot with the 2.7% increase, and I think this year, given some of the challenges that are at play in terms of the utilities and the busing and those fixed costs, the need to meet our special education mandates and services, our contractual salary obligations, the needs to meet the operational costs of this building and our schools. We really achieve a lot of our initiatives in our strategic plan. We are asking for 6.2%. I will say the average increase since 2008 is 3.6%, as you can see. The average increase going back to the year 2000 is 4.73%. Efforts at cost containment, we always kind of end a little bit about talking about cost-saving measures. I think we do an exceptional job at trying to be cost-effective and conservative and look to save wherever we can. School expense budgets, we do purchase from consortiums and from state bid lists to make sure we get the biggest discount for our funds in terms of the materials going into the classroom. Utilities, we certainly set and regulate the occupancy schedules to drive down gas and electricity. This building's helping us do that. We're still getting used to it. We're 7 months into this first campus, but I've already seen savings over a year ago, and I anticipate that can continue. We do participate in the purchasing consortium with our gas rates, and we do look to lock in gas rates at optimal times with the market, and we did that. Gas rates are very low right now. We did that last year at a pretty optimal time. So that is fixed, and we've done a good job watching the market and taking advantage of that over the last number of years. Our special education program, I think a continued commitment to keep students in our schools through the design of customized program. We continue to do that on an annual basis. That's part of really the need of those 3 positions to continuize those programs. We are a member of SEAM Collaborative, and we do participate in the shared transportation contract with other member districts at SEAM that helps us share out-of-district costs of transportation with other districts that participate with SEAM Collaborative. There's 14 other districts that drives those costs down. We are a member of 2 collaboratives, so we pay an annual membership fee for the SEAM and North Shore. But by doing that is professional development advantages, and as well as we get to receive some discounts on costs of tuitions and services by being a member of these 2 collaboratives. And then really constant vigilance with respect to daily operations. We are conservative, we're always looking to save. We certainly send out bids and request quotes and so forth whenever we can to drive down the price. Just recently, one example of this vigilance is last June, we did a thorough telecommunications and cell phone audit, and we looked at all of our lines at all 5 schools: fax lines, fire lines, alarm lines, phone lines, landlines, and we tried to see what lines are maybe unnecessary. And we went through a thorough audit. We went same thing with cell phones, and we identified several lines that we felt we could cancel, and it led to a pretty sizable savings of about $4,000 to $5,000 that we achieved. What can be concluded by the recommended budget? I think what's before you tonight are really funds necessary to meet our contractual obligations I've spoke of, funds that would achieve funds that would fund additional staffing to achieve optimal level of class sizes for teaching and learning, a continuation of our special education programs to meet the needs of students, those are those 3.0 FTE positions, addressing the social and emotional needs of our students, that school psychologist position at the middle school, further enhancing that digital learning model that we made such progress with last year, that additional digital learning paraprofessional, providing needed clerical support to central office, that 1.2 FTE request, fund needed to meet the operational costs and staffing to maintain the middle school, high school campus. That was a budget goal. We feel this budget accomplishes that. Restoring instructional expense budgets, a budget goal. We feel this budget would accomplish that, and restore small capital and equipment line items. So we feel that the 6.2% budget for you would certainly achieve a lot of our recommended goals. Next steps in the process. So we are having ongoing discussions with the finance planning team. The present gap is a little over 1.5 million, so clearly there's a lot of work to do over the next several weeks in the process. We'll be having a lot of meetings with the finance planning team to work on this present challenge that's in front of us. It's certainly, a lot of challenges and work lie ahead. We have a school committee budget workshop a week from tonight on March 14th, where we'll take a closer look at the preliminary budget and have some further discussions. There's a public hearing in this room on April 4th, where we'll further look at where we are with the FY17 budget. We are due to present to the Finance Committee and take their questions on April 13th. The school committee is scheduled to vote on April 25th, and then town meeting is scheduled for June 6th. We'll continue to await state budget actions. Don't anticipate a lot of changes at the state level by hearing of that as it moves through that process, but we'll continue to keep our eye out, and we'll certainly continue to have a lot of discussion on this budget. So with that being said, it was a longer presentation, a bit longer than I anticipated, but I'll open it up to any questions.
Mike, yes. I'm going to be blunt here. This is a fantasy budget. There's not even $400,000 for the entire town and school budget right now. So I guess I'm a little disappointed. I thought we'd also going to get presented the modified services budget tonight. This is our recommended budget. I would never support this budget because the money's not there, and it won't be there unless the people on this committee have a stomach for an override. 6.2%, even in a good revenue year, it just isn't realistic. So that's my own comment.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, Mel, you said you had hoped for the modified level service?
Right, I thought, well, I thought this isn't the modified level services. This
That
includes,
first column.
we had spent a lot of time
No, you
talking
have
about
the modified, you haven't.
It wasn't presented tonight.
So, I guess,
When you consider the positions that we're looking to add, those are the modifications
But this
for level
includes-
services. The one distinction would be the special ed. We're seeing that as a level services budget to meet the needs of
I
students.
guess I don't
and
see
county
NRPS 2021 as part of the modified level services. I see that much above and beyond modified level services.
well, I mean, if I could speak to your comments, we have discussed what is level services and what is we call a recommended, which would include level services plus some enhancements. And the difference between the two numbers really is $471,000 which would be the $406,000 cost for the NRPS positions, the $44,000 cost for the additional 1.2 of clerical support, and then the restoration of small capital equipment we considered as kind of above level services. So the difference really is at 471,000, which is a difference in terms of a percentage increase of what would be a 6.2%, which was what we presented this evening. But that really are the three major differences to a level services budget, which would be a 4.5%. So
I don't disagree with what Mel's saying, but I think this is about perspective, and I think that I appreciate the fact that the administration's coming in and telling us what their goal is for NRPS 21. I mean, that's included in here. It may or may not be realistic based on the budget situation that we have. But I would expect at this early stage of the budget process to have you guys come in and say, okay, this is what we're looking for. This is what we're looking for, level services, and this would be our somewhat enhanced level services based on your strategic plan. But I don't disagree with Mel. We're a long ways.
I mean, we're looking for 1.7 million or 1.5 million budget gap.
But if you look at this budget, I mean, there is, regardless of NRPS, if we wiped out all 10.2 positions, we are far from a balanced budget here based on the available revenues. So we've got to figure out how we're going to approach this. And I think it's going to come down to a list of priorities as far as what we absolutely have to have and what we can do without. And then we're going to have to figure out, because there's no way we can get to this budget with 83.5% of our budget being salaries. And quite frankly, our salary schedules, I think, are competitive with our benchmark peer groups that we look at. We're not at the top end, we're not at the bottom end, we're more or less in the middle. I was looking at the per pupil expenditures, and we've caught up quite a bit on that. Same thing with our benchmark group, we're pretty much in the same category. So I think we have to decide what number we're going to push for with the Finance Committee, with the Board of Selectmen, and certainly with the Finance Planning Team. What number we're going to say, this is what we need, this is our minimum, that we go forward with.
I think that's was our approach. I think we looked at this stage in the preliminary budget, as a preliminary school budget, as a professional obligation to show you what we would be needed to move the district forward and achieve some of the objectives in NRPS 2021. We have recognized really throughout the last several weeks that it's looking very challenging, fiscally, given what's going on with both at the state and local level, and the fixed cost challenges that the town is dealing with. Certainly, some major fixed cost increases that cannot be avoided. We're dealing with it as well this year, which might be a little bit unique over the last couple of years. Some of our fixed costs are a little bit higher than they have been. Mainly, we're dealing with the busing contract. We haven't had that expense to deal with for the last few fiscal years. That is really just subject to the market and what's going on.
But we can offset that, Mike, with the increase in the user fee.
Correct. But it's still $45,000.
About $40,000,
We would offset about
right?
50%.
Right, we can only offset the
Correct.
non-required.
So it's still a cost that we have to account for. The utilities, we're seeing some increases in the water rates that we have to account for. The shift in E-rate, the maintenance costs. Special some costs are driven by special education, and we certainly recognize that, and it's certainly important that we meet those students' needs.
And just in case people are wondering too, all of our contracts, I think, from the administrators to the teachers and all the other contracts as well, call for 2% cost of living increase for the fiscal year.
No, teachers, teachers
Coming up,
2%.
2%.
Yeah.
So as of July 1st, so it's not that there's an extraordinary, raise coming forward for all these employees. It's basically 2% across the board.
That's right. This is my view is that this is a perfectly appropriate budget. This is reasonable, and certainly across, if we look at it in comparison with other communities in the state, we're below in almost every category in spending. We're not sitting here with a great administrative expense or any of those other things. The basic problem is that, as it always is at this time, it just isn't enough revenue. And that is largely at the doorstep of the state. They just don't provide adequate funding, in the Chapter 70 budget. We passed a resolution, there have been so far 20 other communities that have passed. There's 14 more that are up this week, that's last night. It's 14 more that are going to act this week. And my comment on the listserv when I read all of this amount of activity was, why are there not 300 right now? Why are there not 300? And there was a response out of Hamilton Wenham that said, well, we don't think it's in our interest. And I responded back to that, but how can it not be in your interest? If you're in the business of schooling children, how can it not be in your interest to support? They just don't think that there's any revenue available at the state. That's a matter of priorities. And we've got a governor who just hasn't gotten it together yet. And he's going to get a note from at least, I would guess, 34 communities, maybe more than that. It's been a little slow going. Again, I cannot understand why they don't take action. It just baffles me. But that is the place. If you look at the amount the state is underfunding based on the Foundation Budget Commission, the Review Commission, it's a $500 million. If you look at what it is, if you look at what they're underfunding from the beginning in a rational way, it's $2 billion. They're underfunding Chapter 70. That's outrageous. And everybody in this Commonwealth ought to be wrapping their phones in the State House telling them that. I'm only one person. I can only do just so much. But we need to have people get on the line and bring it up. I'm sorry.
No, I agree.
I think that this is a very reasonable budget. Now, we're going to need to have some priority list of what we're going to cut out as we do at this time every year. And I would expect that in our workshop next week, we will proceed to develop those.
Thank you. No, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to go back to Mr. Webster's question and then also to follow up on what Michael said. I think for where we saw ourselves tonight in the presentation of the preliminary budget, we saw our responsibility as bringing to you and to the community what we saw as the needs of the district. We understand, I think Michael would agree, we understand that this may, in some ways, look as though we're asking for more than the community has the appetite to accept, and I recognize that, but for where we are in the process of presenting the preliminary budget, we saw this as an opportunity to present to you the needs and reflect our strategic plan, which, as you all know, is a sizable document, and it's pretty well thought out in detail. We understand that when you meet with us next Monday, that there's going to be some workshopping. We understand that the finance planning team is continuing to look at available revenues, and that ultimately the budget that gets presented and adopted by the committee is likely to be very different than this. But this is the first crack at it, so to speak, and was intended, I think, to just more reflect what the administration saw as the needs of the district.
I just want to be clear, I don't think it's inappropriate. I had the same reaction last year. I mean, I just think 6.2% is overboard. And I just, not inappropriate, but it's overboard, and you can't ask for that kind of money unless you're going to ask for an override. Even in a good revenue year, it's a huge increase. That's all. I mean, I'm not saying it's inappropriate.
I think the challenges we're faced with is that a 4.5% is level services this year because of some of those.
Well,
those needs.
I can look at some of the level services stuff, and I think there's some cuts that can be made there too.
Yeah,
So,
it's
Well, that's the workshop that goes on.
right.
You kind of summarized exactly what I was going to say, that I understand and appreciate this is what we want for our students, but I think next week we'll be modifying the list. There's no doubt that that list will be modified.
You're going to modify the list, but again, you have to be careful to not necessarily get fixated on backing into a so-called revenue number that we have now. If we do that, not only are we going to be able to implement NRPS 21, we're going to be reducing staff.
That's right.
And so you have to, we have to basically decide what we can get by on. And that, what we can get by on, in my opinion, and I think Mel would agree with me on this, is going to exceed what the existing public available revenues
Anything
are.
we vote on is
Yeah.
going to exceed the
Right.
existing revenues.
So I think
current
that has
revenues.
to, we have to keep that in mind as we cull down this budget.
And I think one of my concerns is that this revenue season seems much more severe than many I've seen in the past, and the lack of Chapter 70 increase and the tiny increase in the other state aid makes it even worse. And I just don't, we don't have big housing developments coming into North Reading where we're going to get all of a sudden a zillion building permits and a whole boatload of new tax money. That's not happening. Maybe if the Economic Development Committee is successful over the next few years, we'll have more commercial development, and that'll be helpful. But I guess, I understand the stuff in here. I have a concern when I see new administrative positions. I know they're important, but I think, I guess you positioned it the right way. This is what we would really, I guess I would say this is really what we would really love to have. I don't see this as a must-have budget. I guess that's,
I wouldn't
I guess that's the
characterize it
difference.
as that. I don't consider these luxuries.
I'm not saying the luxuries, but I'm saying
I
that.
consider them more than, wants. I consider them as needs, I do.
Okay.
And I appreciate that. I think that starting with your administrative council, they come to you with budget requests, you come to us with budget requests, and then ultimately we have to make a decision
That's right.
as to what the priorities are. But I wouldn't want to see the administration just come back with a level services number and say, here's level services, this is what we need to keep going the way we're going.
No, but in the past, we've had both
I'm
budgets in
glad
the
to
past.
hear.
Well, Mel, the level services budget here is, if we go level services and eliminate a lot of this stuff, we still have a significant budget gap.
Right, but I'm just saying, in the
Yeah.
past, we've had both of those numbers
Yeah.
presented to us.
Yeah.
Well, I think that doesn't happen at this stage.
Not in the
That's
public
always,
hearing.
that's happening as you work towards the public hearing. That's something I.
So we'll have that next week for the for the workshop, I
Yes.
assume?
I think what you're gonna have the handout that you've seen similar with the two columns. We're gonna workshop what you think, and hopefully have some updated revenue projections from the town, but what do you think are, with our, we'll certainly come in with recommendations to you on the things that we think we can live without, and make do, but it's gonna be difficult, there's no doubt about it. But yeah, the clarity will come as we kind of, this is really, like I said, the first crack at it tonight.
And I think a huge concern of mine continues to be high school class size.
And it doesn't seem like we're even
We're not
addressing
addressing
that.
it.
We're not addressing
We're
it.
not.
There's
The one
One
teacher.
teacher
being
does
added.
not address that problem,
Exactly.
right?
But if you cut teachers, you will address the problem in the wrong direction.
Exactly.
No, I guess my point, Cliff, is, and I'm not an educator, I've said that many times. If John had come in tonight with 5 new high school teachers instead of those 2 administrators, I'd probably be happier with the budget.
But it is part of a plan, and
I
it's
know,
part of
I
a
know.
long-term plan. I'd also like to say that, to thank Mike Gilberto, the town administrator of the Board of Selectmen, they actually pulled together all of the unions in town last Friday night. And based on the projected increase in the health insurance costs, I thought the unions to agree to go back to their membership and try to come to an agreement on a modified health insurance plan that will save the town, I think, John, $200,000, right?
Just slightly more than 200,000.
So they did a lot of work, and it involves changing the health insurance plans for everybody in town, by implementing a deductible.
Now, would that be a
Which hasn't-
$200,000 less of an increase than we're expecting?
Yes,
yes.
Or 200,000, okay,
Less of an increase.
all right. So there'll still be an increase in the.
Oh, yeah,
that's
premium.
correct.
Yeah, what is
Government
that
savings
percentage?
program.
It was 12, now it's
It's
probably,
like-
probably get down to 7.5%.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it was
Right.
down to that, or a little bit, yeah,
7.8.
less than that.
Okay,
But it was an excellent effort by,
Yeah.
like I said, the town administrator and the Board of Selectmen to get this done, and they worked hard at it, so.
And let me make sure my blame is placed rightly here. This is all in the state, in my opinion. All on the state. We're completely underfunding and then undercalculating how much education costs. The state says that we should be spending about $3.5 to $5 million less on education, and then that'd be fine. That's what the foundation budget says. Oh, we're spending $3.5 million more on special education alone. The state says, if you spent this much, you're meeting your requirement. If we spent that much, we'd be in jail because we wouldn't be educating our children. So the state completely underestimates, undercalculates, and then the governor says, well, if I was following the formula, there would have been a reduction in Chapter 70 this year. Well, that's disingenuous because the formula is totally wrong. And this is all on the state's back, which means it's all on our backs because we're the state and we're going to be paying more anyway. But it's much easier to do it statewide than to do it on the backs of local real estate taxpayers.
It doesn't, well, doesn't it seem like the number one priority for every state rep and every state senator in the Commonwealth should be to
Yes.
increase funding for education?
Fix the foundation.
Doesn't that
Yes.
seem to just be a common sense with all the other stuff that they're out there trying to, pay for?
Right now, we have a Republican governor, but he's only been in for a short period of time. This has been going on forever.
Right.
It's been going on since the early 90s, and has continued to erode the funding of schools.
There'll be a lawsuit. There will be a lawsuit
There-
shortly.
If the action, the resolution is,
Right.
if the actions aren't taken to satisfy the need
That's
that's
correct.
in the resolution, this year,
Yes,
a $500 million.
right.
If that's not taken, I would wager with anybody here, 10-1 odds, that there will be a lawsuit.
Filed against the state by, like the Hancock suit
Exactly.
previously. And
It's going to
I think
be
there's a suit
back
that
in,
preceded
back
that
in
also.
court.
Right.
And that just means that we'll waste money going through the court system on something that we should be taking care of
Right.
more rationally.
My question is, do we come to our workshop next week with our opinions on these?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
What are you gonna cut?
I think
Or
we
you
do.
would come tonight's on this.
Absolutely.
Well,
And
we
we're
have
also-
opinions.
We're meeting with the administrative council on Thursday
Mhm.
to discuss further with them, because what we, again, I think almost on a daily basis, the picture becomes clearer and clearer. We had a finance planning team meeting on this past Friday. We're meeting with all the administrators on Thursday, kind of talk with them about where the financial picture is, what at that point will be 2 weeks since the last time we met as a group, to talk with them and to discuss with them where they think they might be able to sharpen their pencil or change their belt, however you want to say it, and have a little bit more information to share with you all on Monday. I'll call it our, it might be our so-called recommendations of where to go, but ultimately in the end, we respect the decision is yours. So I think to your question, the answer is yes, I think I would be
I
thinking.
mean, our level services budget, I think, is a little less than a 4% increase. I think it's about 3.9%.
It used to be, but
It was a little over 4%,
Yeah.
close to 4.5%.
But the town's
expense
increase is almost 4%. So it's not like we're operating in a vacuum.
no, I'm not, Jerry, all I'm saying is, right now, we have about $150,000 additional revenue to work with for next year over this year.
Which makes,
That's gonna probably go up 200,000 or 300,000. I mean, you
At
can't
least.
expect that to
At
go
least.
up $1 million.
it's gonna go up.
But we're not gonna get any help from the state.
No, no.
Hopefully, auto excise taxes more. If we get to $200,000 savings in the health insurance, that's 67% of that comes our way. Remember, we only get 67% of whatever,
Right.
or 66%.
66%, that's not necessarily true.
Well, but in the past years, the town hasn't had the kind of shortfall that they have this
Yeah,
year.
it's-
The town has the same, almost a,
I mean, there's a lot of things coming at us.
right, not the same dollar-wise, but percentage-wise,
That's
the
true.
town
That's true.
has a fairly significant shortfall also on the town side for the budget. So that's the bigger issue. In the past, they've been able to give us more revenue, and we've been extremely appreciative of that, because their
Correct.
budget's been
That's
more
the
in
key difference,
balance.
is that they're struggling to
Balance their
they
budget.
have a
Right.
gap as well this year.
Right.
Where in the past, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
If I could just add one more point about going back to the fall with the administrators, to the question about the high school academic teachers and class sizes and such. One of the things that, and like a lot of you, I've lived through a lot of budget cycles in this community, far more as the principal than I have as the superintendent. But one of the things that I always felt a tremendous amount of respect for was the collaboration among the administrative council to kind of look at the picture in a very big way, that they weren't looking at their school, they were really looking at the district. So when we first sat in the fall with the initial recommendations from the administrators, what you see represented here is not very far off. In fact, it's very close to what those initial presentations were from the principals. So for example, because it was raised. I don't want there to be an appearance that I'll talk about the high school principal, and they came in with a request for a significant number of core academic teachers. This presentation is fairly reflective of that initial request. And that's the kind of work that goes on initially, because they all, they conduct an analysis of where they think they need teachers to balance class sizes and such. So that early work does take place in a very thoughtful way, but to get from November to where we are today, a significant amount of time has passed, and so it's just been further defined.
So you don't envision, Mr. Bernard, adding any high school teachers?
Yeah, there's a request in here for
Just that one?
One core academic, right? And I think what that means right now is because it's kind of in the midst of the scheduling process, it's difficult for the administration, I know this very well, to identify what exactly are those classes going to need to be taught, because we're in the process with students selecting classes, so you don't know, are they going to be in business, or are they going to be, are they going to be English electives, or that will play itself out, but the funding would be for the core academic teacher.
Did anyone in the audience have a question or a concern that you wanted to report?
I'm sorry, I wanted to also add about the high school teachers that if the curriculum leadership model goes through too, there's also recouping of a .4 teacher in the high school, because there are some curriculum leaders currently in place that have a reduced class load at the high school. They would go to a full class load under this model.
I just had one comment on it. Just going backwards, it's a teeny small piece of the budget, but it's just something that I hear about a lot. It's the busing fees. I know a lot of families have trouble with the busing fees as it is right now. This is something I just don't know. Is there any relief for any of the families that may struggle, I guess, income-wise?
There is. So as part of, and this is actually partly a state requirement as well. So families that do qualify for free and reduced lunch do receive a free busing. That's required.
So they don't have to pay anything?
They
for
don't pay
busing.
anything.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Tough
Thank you.
subject, but we'll get
It
through
is,
it.
it is.
Okay, back to Mr. Conley
Thank you.
on the food service provider.
Yes. So before you this evening was a memorandum of recommendation to renew the food service management contract with Chartwell's Dining Services. So Chartwell's, as you know, has been with the district for a number of years. We went out to bid, as we're required to do once every 5 years, 2 years ago, and we've been renewing Chartwell's contract on 1-year renewals for this existing school year as well as last school year. You heard from the Chartwell's management team at the last meeting, and essentially we are very encouraged with some of the trends that we're starting to see. 7.5% increase in participation over the course of the last 2 years. The high school participation has been on the rise the last 2 years. The middle school, with the new building this year and the new cafeteria, has been up on average of 29% over the first 5 months of the school year. The operating net loss through the first 5 months of the school year at this point last year is $12,000 less. So we are certainly seeing a lot of positive things happen with the program. And at this point, we do feel that Chartwell's has proven that they have a commitment in North Reading. We would like to recommend an extension of their contract for 2 additional years, which would take us from July 1, 2016 through June 30th, 2018. Again, our ultimate goal continues to be to operate a self-sufficient break-even program. We are closer to doing that now than we have been in the last 5 to 7 years. We're hoping to lose less than $25,000 this year, and we really want to make it a goal that if we renew this contract for the next 2 years, that at the end of those 2 years, we can essentially say we'll have a break-even program. That will be the goal and the message should we extend for 2 more years to the Sharples management team.
Any change in the term, Mike?
No change in the terms, so it would just be a renewal based on the RFP and what they provided for existing for 2 more years. Any questions? There's a recommended motion in the memo on the back page. It's a 2-sided document.
So just to clarify, you're hoping that within the extended 2-year contract to have a level kind of sum?
Correct. We hope to be able to continue to see favorable results and may not be completely break even at the end of the 2 years, but by the end of the 2 years, be able to say, in the next year, we'll have a break-even program. Which will be recouping about $25,000 over the next 2 years.
Move to extend the food service agreement with Chartwell's for 2 additional years under the same terms from July 1st, 2016 to June 30th, 2018.
Second.
Any further questions or concerns? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes 5-0. Excuse me.
Jenna, Tish, question in the audience.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Is it okay to ask a question related to the budget that I just saw? Is that all right?
Yes.
You alluded to a couple of things related to parents' associations. One thing that we've always talked about at budget meetings, and I forgot to ask, so I apologize, is can you give us an idea right now how much parents support the operating budget in the way of athletic fees, bus fees, tuition, and I know I'm missing some other things, but do you understand the question I'm asking?
Yes.
What people are writing texts
Well over $1 million.
Yeah.
No, it's more than that. It's in the presentation.
It is in the presentation.
Well, just the enrichment and in-kind.
No.
No.
Yeah, but the,
Extracurricular
Right.
You mean
clubs,
right.
the extracurricular
Yeah.
tuition.
I think it's about 2.1
was
million.
it in?
Athletic fee, kindergarten, bus fee,
Preschool.
extracurricular.
Yeah.
I think I have a backup slide on that.
I want to say 2.1 million.
It's substantial.
So this shows you a little bit of the revenue we're anticipating in receiving from something like the athletic user fee, as well as the bus user fee. The athletic user fee, we are anticipating that we'll receive, it's actually a total of $250,000. $232 is an expense, $18,000 is essentially a salary offset. It's highlighted here. So it's $250 in the athletic user fee. It's an additional $40,000 in the extracurricular student club fee. That's highlighted here. It's the bus revolving account is $345,000, which is here. I will just note on the bus revolving account that we don't receive $345,000 annually. We receive about 200 and the bus user fee increase as proposed would project us to receive about 280 to 285,000. We have relied on prior year funds based on conservative spending to increase that amount to help control and this offset and keep it above 300. But the budget assumes 345,000 next year, so it's 250 for the athletic, 345 for the bus, 40 for the extracurricular. Full day kindergarten is budgeted at, I want to say 420,000 between these two amounts, and the preschool is 140,000.
So that's $1,195,000. And that doesn't count all the money that parents send in with their kids every day to buy tissue and paper towel and paper and pens and pencils and
And
erasers.
the PA.
And the PA
And
money.
the
So it's
slide-
over 2 million. then.
Probably well over 2
Because
million.
we're close to 90 for just this year, right? Isn't that
Correct.
the total?
Yeah. So this is, so a good, almost half, a little less than half that, a little over $1 million of that is the fees that you spoke about, the revolving account fees. And then this is the estimated PTO in-kind gifts donation for the enrichment activities, the class field trips, some of the classroom startup supplies, and teacher stipends that they also support. We estimate that's going to be around $60,000.
Technology that they're purchasing.
Correct. as well as some of the donations are also from the PTO group,
So
so
that's half
between
the
these
year.
two. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so we just talked about a whole bunch of things. Can you just give me just your best number?
Including everything, it's probably about $1.5 million to $2 million.
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah.
Including all of this stuff.
Oh, it's over 2 with this.
Well, no.
Well, no, because it was
It's
1.1.
You're
Yeah.
adding about
Oh,
100,000, Julie, so probably about 1.2.
Give me a second.
No, because that's for half a year.
Well, that's half the year.
So it's probably 1.3, 1.4
Okay.
million. And then that doesn't count everything that
Right.
parents send in that we don't know about.
Sure.
Tissue.
Madam
Yeah.
Chairman, if I could,
Yes, please.
Michael mentioned about conservative spending, when he was talking about the bus fee offset. It's very typical that I institute a freeze, or in past years, the superintendent would institute a freeze on operating budgets at some point in the school year. This year, I instituted a soft freeze in October. So that means from July 1st, when the budget kicks in, sometime in mid-October, I was asking the administrators for really only kind of the absolute necessary purchases. And we've been operating under that since mid-October, anticipating that there were going to be challenges this year, and that we wanted to make sure that we had enough funds to get through to the end of the fiscal year. So I think that's another bit of information that's very historically, very typical, unfortunately. It may not always be October, but it's not all that unusual for it to be in the fall, sometimes January.
So to give you an exact amount, out of the revolving account, out of this 2.4 million, 1,195,000 is contributed to the revolving, those fees from those 5 programs I just referenced. The other remaining is the federal and state entitlement grants. And then if you look at these amounts here, I would say it's at least another 150,000 between donations and the PTO budgets. It'd be fair to say it's close to about 150,000. So the total is 1,345,000.
And on that 1,195,000, a lot of those fees are for services we're not required to provide.
Correct.
You know, there's a cost of preschool, there's a cost of full-day kindergarten. It'd be nice if we could provide it. It's the same thing
All of
applies
it.
to
All of
busing.
it.
None of it
All of
required.
it is, we don't
Well,
provide. Athletics, we're not
I separate the athletics out a little bit.
Yeah,
because
but we're not
it's part of a-
required.
It's part of a
I agree,
a
but
program.
none of it is required.
But the busing and in particular, the preschool and the kindergarten, there's a
Right.
cost to doing that, and that's what the fees are for.
Thank you.
On to routine matters, if I could get a motion to accept the minutes of February 1 open session.
So moved.
Thank you, in a second. Any questions, concerns, or updates? On the motion, first,
For the minutes, there's
Oh.
a second, Julie.
Julie did. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. On to bids and donations. If I could get a motion to accept the donation from, oh, that's why I'm not seeing who it's from. An anonymous donation of $435.01 for the design and expense of the production of Christmas Story. In a second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And as well, there is a donation from the North Reading Touchdown Club for the purchase of high school athletic football jersey t-shirts in the amount of $914.90.
Move to accept with gratitude a donation of $914.90 from the North Reading Touchdown Club to purchase high school athletic football jersey t-shirts.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. And a anonymous donor very graciously donated $1,500 to support the cost associated with the upgrades at the North Reading Athletics facility.
Move to accept with gratitude $1,500 anonymous donation for upgrades to North Reading's athletic facilities.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Just a quick one. Sure. This is the new subcommittee.
It is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all. An anonymous
I move
donation.
to accept with great gratitude an anonymous donation of $2,500 to support costs associated with upgrades to North Reading athletic facilities. Thank you, Mom.
Second.
Very anonymous.
Very anonymous.
Very anonymous. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay.
And those are the first donations we've had, other than what?
We've also had one of the
Yeah.
lacrosse league has not, youth lacrosse has not donated the money yet, but they've committed to a donation to the new field complex at the high school, middle school. And we're going to talk about that in a second, I guess, once I've heard it, so.
Right now?
Right now.
And there you go. Segue right into it. Mr. Venezia and Mr. Webster.
Is it the
Facilities
For the-
Committee.
Yes.
We had a meeting about a week and a half ago. Yeah, a week and a half ago.
February 23rd, yes.
Right. And we had great turnout from the community. We have since gotten a follow-up note, letter out to all of the leagues regarding our next meeting and regarding our plans. It's looking like the cost for what we want to do at the new high school and middle school athletic facilities will be about $100,000. So far, we have 7,000 committed, 4,000 raised, and approximately 7,000 committed.
Can you explain what that entails?
It's irrigation and putting sod on the new, instead of seeding, on the new all-purpose field and the new softball field.
So this isn't bathrooms or?
No, and the major, the number one goal here is irrigation. If we can sod it, that would be a bonus, but irrigation is going to be necessary there, those fields aren't going to last.
We had an estimate of about $53,000 to
right.
install the irrigation. The other issue we have is trying to deal with the water department. Is Mr. Clark going to come in to our next
We
meeting?
invited you.
Okay, so it's the water commissioner is going to come into the next meeting so we can discuss with him the cost and the availability of the water, town water.
So that's issue number one. Then to get to the issue you just discussed, the restrooms and also the concessions facility at the current turf field. Mr. Venezia and I, last week, a week and a half ago, paid a visit to Essex Tech, where they have a building that was put together on site. It's a combination restroom and concession facility. It's a lot bigger than what we need. And we thought the building was pretty nice. So we talked to Mr. Bernard, and he contacted a company that puts up those buildings. And actually, Mr. Bernard and I met today on site here with a couple representatives from that company to see if it would be possible to put one of those buildings here. They came, they said it would be possible. No cost or anything, they're going to cost it out and get back to us. So I'm assuming this week, next
He
week,
indicated about a week and a half.
we'll have a cost. Again, what we probably should have asked them, John, and I thought about this after I left, we should have asked them also for a cost if it was just restrooms and not a concession.
Concession.
Because we don't know what the cost is going to be, so I think it'd be great to have those options. Again, if we don't have those restrooms, we don't have a plan in place by next February and a budget for those restrooms, the turf field will be closed.
Oh.
Would you like me to ask him if you can break it out that way?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
if we get both, that'd be great.
I'll do that.
We are under a waiver that runs till February 3rd of 2017 to continue to use porta potties at the turf field. After that, we have to have an approved funded plan, and then we have to begin construction in the spring of
And in addition to the waiver, we
2017.
have a variance too.
Right,
That
a
allows
variance,
us to build
Fewer-
fewer bathrooms than
fewer
what would
facilities.
probably be called for under the regulations.
Right.
Could a facility like this fall under the town's like capital improvement?
I think it's going to have to,
I don't know how else we're going to do it.
yeah, I think we're going to have, this will have to be a project that's funded by town/schools capital project. The funds just aren't. I mean, I have no idea how much it's going to cost, but I'm guessing $250,000 to $500,000 is not an outrageous.
I think I'd be shocked if it's that.
That's part of
Yeah.
the
It's
charge
gonna
of
be
this
expensive.
committee is to find out what it's going to cost.
Right.
From what I remember when we were talking about the building on the field, those numbers sound low rate.
They
Yeah.
sound low end?
Yeah, they do.
Well, this
I
is
think
a,
certainly $250,000, I think
This is a prefab, so this is a prefab building where they bring it in with a crane and they just bring the 4 pieces down and kind of slap it together. The other thing is, and you're right, John, because we are responsible for building the footing for it. We're responsible for connecting up the water to it, and we're responsible for connecting it to the wastewater treatment plant.
For doing the plumbing and the electrical.
They'll do everything else. They'll bring the building, the plumbing,
The
electrical, fixtures, it's all part of it. We have to connect it to the resources. water,
Interesting enough,
wastewater.
Essex Aggie had the same setup as us. Their
Right.
field is just far enough from the high school building.
They
They have a team room identical to
Right.
ours, that they have team bathrooms, team room
Right
facilities
down
for
by
the
the field.
So
players,
they
right
have
down
to
by the
come
field.
back at a later date to.
Yeah, they
in
put
this-
it, that was, it wasn't in the budget for their project.
Mhm.
They waited till the end to see if they had any money left over, and they had
And what was
it.
their cost, do you have?
We don't know.
So, well, we're not sure, but then they put an identical building to the one they put in for the team rooms, an identical
Right.
building adjacent to it, which contains the concession stand and the public bathrooms.
Right.
So it's almost the same situation as we have.
And that building was just short of $400,000 without all the tie-in and the concrete and
What, our team room?
the Essex Tech building.
The Essex Tech, but it's built, it's bigger, it
It's-
contains,
it is
it
bigger.
contains
It
more
contains a lot more
facilities.
facilities
Yeah,
than
than
restaurants.
we're gonna need, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to mention about the exterior since we asked?
Right, we then talked about the exterior, he asked if we wanted to put the, kind of the clapboard on like we have now, and we actually asked him for 2 different, for the, kind of the broom dawn finish with a color, and also what it would cost to have bricks that would match the, a brick finish that would match the current team room. So we'll get, and I know bricks are gonna be more expensive than a broom dawn
Yeah.
painted finish, but we figured we'd get costs for both of those too. But this is not gonna be a cost that I think that I know we can't raise the funds unless there's someone out there who wants to step forward and have the whole, have the whole area named after them, the such and such concession and, and pavilion or whatever. I don't see us raising that kind of money. And I think that was it.
A question about capital improvements, I mean, this could kind of wipe out our portion of
Well,
what
it wouldn't be for
submit.
this, so I don't know if it would officially go through the capital improvement planning committee. We need to mention it to them.
I think it has to be.
We wouldn't vote on it, we would not be able to vote on it until October.
But
It
again,
wouldn't be
Julie,
for this June.
our feeling is this is a joint
Oh, right, right,
school
right.
project.
I don't think we'll be able to get to it for this June. We don't have the, just don't have the information.
Oh.
The turf field is owned by the town.
Right.
And so they would need to put the building on school property.
No,
most
we're
likely.
looking at, well, we were looking today, we looked at a couple areas. They're both on the, well, one of them would be on school property that we looked at today. The other one would be on where the existing
Down where it is now.
concession stand is. And that would be, that might pose some difficulties, he said, in terms of getting the crane in there that they need to, he said these pieces can, what, 80,000 pounds, I thought he
I
said.
actually went on the website after them.
Yeah.
They have a video on there.
Oh, really?
It was actually very interesting to see, but yeah, he said about 80,000 pounds, plus the weight of the vehicle.
Right, the weight of the crane. I mean, ideally, we'd put it where the current concession stand is, ideally,
Right.
because that's the easiest hookup to the pump for the
Wastewater treatment.
wastewater treatment, and then water.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yes.
any kind of water. We'd have to hook up water
Definitely.
from anywhere, so that's, I think, and our next meeting is Wednesday, the 16th.
He was also going to price the grill with the grease
Oh, right.
trap, and
It's gonna-
again,
right.
Those were like add-ons just to consider.
We're gonna include a grill in the concession stand, and also a
Grease
a
trap.
mop sink,
And a
grease
mop
trap,
sink, right.
yeah.
So
And our next
hopefully
meeting
we'll
is
have
next
estimates.
Wednesday,
Right.
here at 6:30?
6:30 in this room.
Right.
16th.
Okay. Mr. Venezia, the NORCAM?
I did not attend the meeting on February 25th, but I can say that the only issue the school department has in front of the NORCAM board is the cameras in both the Performing Arts Center and the gymnasium. So that's been an ongoing issue between myself and NORCAM. There's a cost associated with doing the project as far as in the gym, we would just need the cameras to be hooked up. And I've been fighting for that, but they're not inclined to do that at this time. In the Performing Arts Center, we have to do some infrastructure.
Yeah.
And there's a cost associated with that that could be, between $70,000 and $100,000. So That's an ongoing issue. I'm going to raise it again with them when I go back, because we've been focused pretty much on the camera in the gym. I think I'm going to try to open it up for discussion to do the whole project and see what their contribution would be to that, so.
Okay. And then back to Mr. Webster and Mr. Venencia.
I was
on
not present for athletics subcommittee, so we'll have to use.
Athletics Subcommittee, again, we had Mike gave us a good update on the FY16 athletic budget. I think we're in good shape. We've had a good year as far as revenue from gate receipts.
Yes.
2 nice games last week,
Yes.
2
Yeah,
big games
yeah.
for the
We
girls
had
and
the
boys
Thanksgiving-
basketball games.
Right, exactly. We had the Thanksgiving game at home. We had extra playoff games
Yep.
for the football team at home. So our gate receipts were up, and it's helped us on the budget side.
We must have 1,000 people in there on Saturday night. The stands were full,
It's really good.
and there were people standing on each end.
And for the girls' game, there weren't a lot of empty seats.
Yeah,
either,
it's like-
to be honest with you,
Good
yeah.
crowd both nights.
Hockey booster transition also, this is the junior varsity hockey program has been subsidized for many, many years, going all the way back to 1996 by the high school hockey boosters. And they've asked that we begin to budget for the operation of the JV hockey team. And they want to transition this over, I think it was 3 years, John?
Correct.
So that they would, at the end of 3 years, that the JV hockey team would be paid for the same as through an appropriation, just like the other teams are. I think the subcommittee was inclined to agree to this if we spread it out over 3 years, because there'll be budget ramifications to it.
That's correct.
Yeah. We also had a discussion with Recreation regarding the summer camp fees. I think we're trying to work that out with them.
I think we're in a good place. I think we've come to a good understanding on that.
Something that's
so,
affordable for Recreation.
A good working relationship.
The tennis courts was back on the agenda. We're trying to figure out a way to light the tennis courts.
Did we get a cost, or did Marty got a cost?
Marty did get a rough cost.
So I actually texted him, the facilities crew here opened the tennis courts today. I don't know if you saw that they
Yeah,
cleaned
they're open
them.
already?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
cleaned today. They cleaned it today. I think they're getting ready for spring sports, which is a good
Yeah.
sign, and put the nets up. And
Good.
so I texted Marty just to let him know that, and he is working to try to figure out what that would cost and what's the most efficient way to operate the lights.
We were considering, Mel, that we're talking about putting a push-button system on there so that if you went there, you could activate.
Also,
the
they wouldn't
lights.
have to be on all the time.
Right, because the cost could be as much, I think he said $50 an hour.
Yeah, I think it was at least, I think it was
Maybe
70. Yeah,
$70
because it's a
an hour.
push
If we're
button.
open them 3 nights a week, we're talking about $600 a week for 3 hours.
Potentially.
A night for
You know,
3 nights.
But again, the lights aren't necessary until after a certain time, particularly in the spring.
Right.
I mean, the early summer.
Maybe only have them on for a couple hours.
Is that
Yes.
for town use? Is that what
Yes.
you're envisioning?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, community use,
Okay.
yeah. So I think this push-button system, if you come and you want to play, you can
That's a good
activate
idea.
it, and it goes
And
off
it
on a
times
timer.
out, so,
Times
yeah,
out.
you could just
So-
hit it again if you're still there.
We're looking at, because we have the lights, we have the courts.
The only issue with that is you get kids going onto the court and just pushing them,
Yeah.
and turn the lights on in the middle of the
Yeah,
night.
it's possible.
Can we set that up with a credit card?
Another fee,
Pay to
Debit-
play?
debit card.
another
No
pay to
fees.
play, another.
That's a potentially good solution. Maybe there's a key, there's got to be some sort of system that but I think our goal is we got 6 tennis courts there, to let the community use them a couple of nights, 3
Yeah.
nights a week.
Yeah.
Especially, and in that we need the lights probably April, May. Then once June, July, August come around, you really don't need the lights because it's light till 9 o'clock. And then maybe September, you have the lights on again, so maybe 4
I'm not sure in the
months.
spring either what time the high school teams are going to practice, because you have the girls and the boys, so I'm sure they're going to alternate, so there may be some need for the lights.
The other thing we had talked about too is at North Reading athletics, whatever the Parks and Rec might have program time at night, where they could use it at night for lessons, et cetera. So,
I wanted to follow up too, I did meet with Wayne Hardinger about the signage, we talked about
Yes.
some signs.
Oh,
that
yes,
kind of
yes, yeah, good
use,
point.
And so that, I think I actually met with him that afternoon, so I wouldn't forget. And he was working on, he thought he had one of the old signs somewhere from the old tennis courts, believe it or not, or he was going to drive by where he lives, because they just did some work in Wayne, and snap a picture to see if he could match what we thought was.
We want to make it clear that those courts are for tennis only, they're not for anything else. I went over and looked at the Wilmington courts to see, because
Yeah.
they were done by Gilbane as well. And somebody had said that they had put an extra layer on it. They didn't. Ours were every bit as good as the surface over at Wilmington. But I noticed in the Wilmington courts that whatever they were doing in there, I don't know, it was kids on skateboards or whatever, they were scratched, all scratched up. And And so that's what we want to avoid here, that we don't have skateboarders on there. we
Well,
don't
that's
have-
my question too. If we're opening it up for
Right.
community use,
Yeah.
like monitoring, like would custodial staff kind of keep,
No,
you know,
that's
like
the problem.
that's, you know, maintenance, vandalism, like those
Well,
types of things.
They
And
won't be supervised, I mean, it's
Right,
right
no,
outside, it's
right.
right outside my office too, so
Yeah.
to
Right.
the extent I can.
But at nighttime, I mean,
But
there's not a lot
generally-
of people
Yeah,
here.
but generally, again.
It may work out that the only way to do it is to have someone supervise it, whether it be from Parks and Rec, because, I mean, that's the issue you have. If you
And
have,
just
a-
the increased traffic, you know, of kids and I don't know, with kids come up here and use it, I'm not sure, but.
so it's
The good
something
news
we're
is we
looking
don't
at.
have an issue in the fall. You know,
Yes,
it's-
there was
it's
no
right
problems in
over
the fall, yeah.
so.
Yeah. And finally, we did talk again about the same issue that we had at the facilities meeting, again, the irrigation, and we got an update from Marty Tilton that the irrigation would cost approximately $53,000 to install. So our goal is to raise that money as soon as possible to get the irrigation in there and to meet with the water commissioner to see what the cost of purchasing the water is. And John, anything else that we?
No. We had kind of a skeleton crew of the meetings.
Yeah, we're missing some people.
Yeah.
Seems like everybody was in Florida.
Did you discuss perhaps putting a well in there?
We've talked about that pretty extensively, and a couple of things. I mean, one is the cost, and two is the time restrictions. Like I said, we'd like to get, we can do the well at any point in time. If we get the irrigation
Pipe system.
installed, right.
Yes,
And
sir.
guess what? Yeah, we have talked about it.
Look, we were told the only place, this according to Rita Mullen,
Yeah.
that we could put a well in there and maybe find water is the corner of the baseball field way down by Ryers.
Yeah, that would be the location.
That'd be the
most likely
location for a well. So you're talking about running a pipe a long, long way.
But that might be the eventual solution,
Right.
is to.
Yeah,
Every time I've been down in that area near the wastewater plant, you know, there's been water.
Oh, exactly, we know, yeah.
And we know that there's
Yeah.
a certain amount of water
Really?
that's,
When we went out today to look at the site, we saw it.
Right.
Yeah.
There's water everywhere on the site, except for the place we drilled the well.
We need it.
And I'm sure we wouldn't find any water in that location.
Jerry, what is the time frame as to when we need to get the irrigation in
Well,
to get them functioning?
Ideally, and we've had preliminary discussions with our project manager, ideally, Julie, that it would be before they finish grading the field, so we don't have to dig up something afterwards.
They're doing that soon.
Yeah, very soon,
Yeah,
very
that-
soon.
yeah, it's gonna be
But the
difficult.
thing with irrigation is if you own a house and you put it in, they can come in with machines and they
Yeah,
can
just
make
drill
cuts
under,
and they
yeah.
can put it in.
It's slick.
But it's
Yeah.
not the best situation. The best situation would be to do it now,
Right.
so. So that was pretty much it.
Okay, the finance planning team met on March 4th. Myself and Mr. Venezzi was there, and it wasn't any glorious news by any stretch of the imagination, but I think we discussed it earlier, where they met with the unions, and they were able to negotiate the health insurance down to a level that if they go back to the unions and it comes through, it should.
Yeah. I think a good deal of the meeting was us discussing our budget with the finance planning team. And Mike did a, nice presentation. We had a preliminary budget that we shared with them as well. So then they know where we're coming from at this point in time, because they have the information that we have.
That's right.
We discussed the schools and the roof, and we ran into a little bit of a hiccup.
I have that on my administrative
Okay,
report.
so I'll leave it for that then. All right, subcommittee schedule. The evaluation subcommittee will meet March 10th at 3 p.m. at the superintendent's office. The athletic facilities committee, as mentioned earlier, will meet here, 6:30 on March 16th. NORCAM will meet again on March 31st at 7 p.m. at the NORCAM office. The finance planning team will meet again April 1st at 8:15 in the morning at the superintendent's office. The athletics subcommittee will meet April 5th at 12:30 at the superintendent's office, and SSBC meets tomorrow at 5:30 here at the distance learning, and then again on April 12th at 5:30 at the distance learning lab.
It'd be a fast meeting tomorrow night, so I can get to Burlington with the traffic.
don't we have a SSBC meeting tomorrow?
We do.
Yeah.
Yes,
We do, 5:30.
superintendent.
And I would just, before I get into my administrative report, there was talk of maybe a finance planning team meeting this coming Friday. It does not look like that is going to happen. I don't know if you remember at the end of the, but right at the end of the meeting, there was talk of maybe having a meeting, but it doesn't look like that's the case. So, Madam Chairman, I have a few things to talk with the committee about. The first is attached to my report for you tonight is a draft of the article for the naming of the main middle school corridor in memory of Charlie Jones. So if there's no corrections or questions or concerns about that, I'll submit that to the town administrator for inclusion in the June 6th warrant. I think I went back and looked at the motion that was made at the time that the committee decided to make this decision, and I think that article reflects that. Okay. Just a reminder for the committee and for the community that the Community Impact Team is sponsoring the North Reading Night Off on next Tuesday, March the 15th. So the little school roof replacement project, a little update on that. Ms. Imbriano mentioned that we had gotten some information last Thursday. When I say we, Michael Conley, Wayne Hardiker, and I are on the cost estimates at 60% design. And I think it's fair to say they're up beyond where we would like to be right now. I had a preliminary call with the project manager for the project on Friday about that. There was a call scheduled for today anyway with the architect and the two cost estimators that have been engaged to review the scope of the project. That conference call was today, and that was about an hour and a half. Am I right, Michael? Several of us were involved with that. And I think it's fair to say that right now they're working to try to reconcile the cost. And I'm expecting some additional information. It could be as early as tomorrow. The one thing that I think may be at issue and will need some consideration is whether or not the material that we had initially indicated we wanted the roof to be, which was that SBS material, may need to be, or at least be considered the EPDM material, which is what's on this building. But it's a little bit, I'm sorry that I'm a little bit vague with the details. It all kind of just happened very quickly. And as I said, they're expecting to share some more information again as early as tomorrow, but certainly sometime this week when I have that. I sent you all an email that I had gotten from Jeff D'Amico later this afternoon. I sent that to you a couple of hours ago, which I had asked him to just kind of provide a summary of where things were, so you have that in your inbox if you haven't already seen it. But I'll continue to update you. I included the town administrator, the finance committee representatives that originally met with us about the funding for this project. So I'll keep you updated. That's essentially what I know at this point. But I made it very clear that the budget was the budget, and we needed to make this work. And I think that message was heard today. And they're working diligently to try to bring in that number. And my expectation is that they'll get there.
Just a comment. I'm highly appreciative of everything that the MSBA has done to help us build our schools here and to help us with this roof project. But I think we'd be a great case study for how they might take a look at their process. In terms
Where we
of,
are right now is what we've lived for quite some time on this
Exactly.
project. It's very interesting.
Exactly.
It's
I mean,
almost
I think
a
that
mirror image.
it's
The
so,
process. It
I think
is.
it's so difficult to get an accurate,
It is.
construction number cost on plans that are only X% complete. And I think that somewhere along the line, they either have to say, you gotta put more money up front, and then it's gonna come in under, and then you can reduce. But this process is painful.
Does this, I mean, I don't know other towns, I mean, is this a similar thing? that's
I think it
happening
happens
other
in-
towns as
I
well?
think it's very typical with building projects. yeah.
Just to give you a little background on that, my old company always had a clause in the contract related to what most people talk about as construction cost estimates, and it was not called that in our contract. It was called an opinion of cost. Now think about the difference in the semantics
It's very
there.
different.
That's very different. It's an opinion of cost, and it was in there specifically because this isn't just a casual, once for us or twice for us occasion. It is commonplace. And in the end, you go out for bid, and the bidders come back, it's a competitive bid. You're going to get the lowest price you can do for that on that day. But the estimators are trying not to, scare you to death, and at the same time, they're working from data that's in the past, not in the future.
I think the big issue I have though is that the level of assurances you seem to get, what I've seen up front, oh, that's far more money than you'll need. I've heard that twice, and both times it seems it's been wrong.
And
That's
you
all.
always get that at a point in
Right.
time, and then there's a time period before the project is fully designed, and then there's an estimate made, or an opinion of cost given. And
But
that's, that time period, everything changes, because when you're doing the cost estimating, you're working off previous data. The way you know it's in the past, not projected into the future. And estimators try to project into the future, but it's not a science. It's
No,
an
but the issue is when you're dealing with, towns and cities and taxpayer money, it's a lot different than when you're dealing with a private industry that might say, all right, we got another $1 million here, we'll throw at it, versus us, we can't do that.
I mean, I think it's-
90% of my projects were with municipalities or government agencies.
I mean, the positive is that we have another option for
Right.
material that is not going to cost as much, so.
Right.
And
You call that value engineering?
That term was used.
Yes.
And I think it's important about that, to that point about the bid documents. We had had a discussion as part of the conference call today around an alternate material as being part of that initial bid, so that we would not be on a delay. In other words, the desired material, the original material, the SVS system, and the EPDM material
Because
would be part of the
they
bid.
did give us that.
Correct,
Right.
and the PVC was the
Right.
third one, but it looked at the two, the EPDM and the SVS would be part of the bid document, so that we'll be on that, we'll be able to maintain that timeline, because we want to try to take advantage of the summer as much as we can. The other important thing I think that came out of that conference call today was that there's going to be a site meeting at the little school on March 28th, so the architect, project manager, they're going to be coming out, we're going to start to look at the staging of materials and trying to maximize the calendar, if you will, to get the project done with as little interruption to the school year, either on the June end or the September end as possible. So, little update for you on that project. The last thing I wanted to inform you of was, unfortunately, which I've been talking about with you all for quite some time, the Alice School Safety and Security Program. Unfortunately, the day that we were due to roll this out across the district was February 5th, and I had made the decision to close the schools because of the snow. So we're taking advantage of the next professional development opportunity that we have across the district, which is not until April 15th, unfortunately. It's less than desirable. I was hoping we would be on a bit of a faster track than that, but it is what it is, if you will. But people have been very good. The police department, whether it's Mike Murphy, Sean O'Leary, Kevin Donnelly, Tom Hesh, the fire department, Barry Galvin, Bill Warnock, they're working with us very well they understand what we're up against, and I feel very confident saying to you we're able to, with little adjustment, to maintain the calendar that we have, the timeline, if you will, to get this program into our schools starting this spring, and then really having it in a very full-fledged way early next fall across the
And
district.
that's
So
K to 12.
it's K to 12, right? That's in all 5 schools, all 4 buildings. So a little bit of a delay, but unfortunately it was necessary because of the weather on February 5th. So that's all I have, Madam Chairman. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Correspondence. You do have a piece of correspondence in the packet. I just wanted to give you a copy of the Chapter 70 resolution and the cover letter that went. I gave you just a sample that went to the Suburban Coalition, but this was also, I think at the direction of the committee, was sent to Senator Tarr, who I've heard from, Representative Jones, who I've had a personal conversation with about this, and also to Governor Bacon, who has not called me.
You haven't heard from him yet?
Doesn't he know you're a staunch Republican?
Exactly.
I thought we could visit Brendan Moss. He's working.
Oh, that's right. He's in the finance and
Yeah.
revenue or whatever
I
department he's in.
may have to make a call.
The spokesperson.
I remember one of my first actions with, on the legislative representative, the first year that I was on the committee, was writing a letter to Governor Patrick about this subject and had a solution as to how we could solve the problem with revenue. And I never got a response back.
That's because he Googled you.
And he took my suggestion for revenue enhancement and applied it in a different way. It would have resolved the issue.
I guess a question and an observation. Based on the Chapter 70 resolution, I saw the list today from the Suburban Coalition, the very short list of communities that have signed on to that, and I was disturbed. That's unfortunate because there needs to be a much stronger rally cry of more communities, around this particular issue. Do you know what I'm talking about, Cliff?
You brought it up at the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, okay, so you already brought it up. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I wasn't here. Beverly is actually doing something that we've done in the past, and I just wonder, based on the conversations you just had about the MSBA and some of the complications there, and also the Chapter 70 and the unfunded mandates, have you considered, if you talked to Senator Tarr or Representative Jones, actually having them come to your next finance planning team meeting or to the budget workshop, just to let them see how the process unfolds and have them more intricately involved in the struggle that the community faces, and so that they can be a stronger voice back to Governor Baker? I mean, I realize that it's a difficult task, but I do think
I'd
that
say at
the
least
more...
once a year, we've had Brad, probably more, at the finance planning team to discuss a lot of these issues. I know last year we did as we were going into the budget. I think we might have had Bruce once.
That's not a bad idea.
It's a good idea to get them back in.
No, I know.
Senator Tarr is such a strong advocate for our community, for his communities, and for education. And I just think that, visibility is important.
Yeah.
And the more he can rattle Governor Baker's cage with specific issues and concerns and legitimate numbers and, the fact that, these things, they haven't gotten any better.
Well, the frustrating thing, Deanna, is it's all there in that report
Right.
that was done by legislators.
Right.
It's all there, and they're completely ignoring it.
Right.
They're completely ignoring it.
I don't understand how it can't be the highest priority.
I don't-
Every
Right, well, I
single-
guess my point is, let's make it their priority by bringing him here and not giving him a choice
I
to affirm
kind of
our
like,
message.
I kind of like that idea, and I'd be inclined to do it at the finance planning team meeting. That way they're not tied up for an evening or 2 or 3 hours or whatever. But I think that's a good idea. I really do.
The Suburban Coalition is putting together a meeting that I believe it's in mid-April. That it's still in flux. That it would invite the governor, and last year we had the lieutenant governor come, committee chairs of Ways and Means, the idea was to try to get that rolling around again and get enough people there so that it attracts their attention. The problem is that, and I don't know if you heard how many people have responded to this petition, but there's 20 communities that have actually passed the resolution, and there's another 14 that are on for this week. That isn't enough
No,
to
it's
do it.
sad. It's a sad number.
It's sad, right?
Yeah.
It's sad. And if you can't get the communities, the districts to go out and fight for it, how are you ever going to stir the legislators?
And I say the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
You and I have been fighting this with the state since I've got on this committee, and it's awful, absolutely awful. You just can't get them to change them. It's a matter of priorities. We know it's a matter of priorities, and this year is particularly irritating because Governor Baker just has completely ignored the Chapter 70 increase that we need.
Maybe Janine can talk to Bob Masseri and see if we can invite them to the next finance planning team.
Definitely.
I think
See what they think about that.
the biggest issue we have though with the budget is and this number shocks me, is that 41% of the budget goes to cover healthcare costs for those who can't afford insurance. It's a huge, it's like $5 billion. It's
That's
a huge,
insane.
it's an insane number. And, you know, if you want to look for money, that's probably where some of that money is. And there was one other non-discretionary cost, and it was another several $1 billion. And it's like, the problem is they don't make education should be the same kind of thing. It should be non-discretionary. It should, that 500 million should have been put in this year and should be kept in till we get up to the 2 billion that they're behind.
It should increase it at
500 million.
500
Right, for
million
the next
a
3
year
years,
until
right.
we get to the
2 billion.
to 2.5.
Right.
Because by that time, it'll need 2.5.
Well, it just seems to me that over the years, we've taken our problem to the State House, and I think that let's just try a different approach and bring the State House to the problem and just not let it go away until we get the answers that we need to have.
That's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea.
Would you want to contact Bob?
Yeah, I'll email
Or-
him.
okay. We can get on
We
the
both
agenda.
can, yeah, definitely. Thank you.
I think part of the frustration that I have with it as well is that our rep and senator are on board. So it's like being a Republican in Massachusetts. You know, you go in your vote, and it doesn't mean anything because
You got a Republican governor.
Yeah, come
Right.
on.
Again. Again.
second time
What do you guys
in
want?
20 years.
No, Salucci, well, there's too
Salucci.
many of them, that's the problem.
Problem is we got 3 reps and
Right.
2 senators.
That's true.
Okay. Future business,
Sorry about so close.
did you want to say?
No, I just was trying to acknowledge Deanna that I thought it was a good suggestion.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's another effort to try.
Just a pounded home to them.
Can't hurt.
You know, but they know,
They don't.
Yeah.
those 2 guys
And
know.
they're good, they're
Yeah, they're on the right track.
so supportive, yeah.
You can have Anna make a nice breakfast for us.
Exactly, yeah. Get with the food.
All right, lure 'em with the food. On March 14th at 4 PM, the school committee budget workshop will take place at the superintendent's office, conference room. On March 21st at 7 PM, we'll have the regular meeting, but it will be at the Hood School, at the library at the Hood School. And then on April 4th at 7 PM, the fiscal year 2017 public hearing will take place here at the Digital Learning Lab. And if there's no other discussions or topics to bring up, I'll entertain a motion to,
So moved.
in a second. Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.